It all starts in a modern and beautiful establishment. It is quite spacious and popular among people. A small doorbell rings, indicating the arrival of a new visitor. A large, dark-haired man can be seen in the doorway, a sword hanging on his back, armor on his body, and the head of a slain monster in his hands. The establishment is full of people, but the hunter heads to an empty bar counter and leaves his weapon near it. He is met by a bartender Cow already knows, who pours him a full glass of alcohol and asks about the man's catch today. The brunette sighs and notes that today was only a short walk, where he only got the fangs and skin of a fanged wolf. Chow takes a sip of his beer and glances at the screen on the other side of the establishment to see if the meeting has started yet. The bartender agrees and also looks at the screen, like most of the customers. We see a huge courthouse. There are a lot of people in it, a judge and one defendant. The end of the voting and the results of the votes of all congressmen sitting in the room are announced. The man in glasses reads out all the votes from the paper. All 325 votes were in favor. This same man says that the verdict was passed on today's date. Parliament President He Yao announces into the microphone that during the war, a lot of evidence was found about Musk committing brutal murders, as well as a large number of other crimes. The sentence was death, but despite this, the main character sits very calmly and shows no signs of anxiety. The president continues his speech, and Parliament has decided to strip Musk of all his titles, leaving only the title of hero. The main character still listens calmly to the verdict, expressing absolutely no emotion. The plot shifts again to the bar, where one of the patrons begins to defend Musk, because if it weren't for him, humanity might have come to an end. The people sitting nearby clearly disagree. In their opinion, the credit belongs to all the people, including He Yao, who could not be torn away from the fight. But the first man is not going to give in to this argument, and begins to defend the honor of the main character. The argument begins to escalate, and both visitors begin shouting. The dark-haired guy responds to the man's arguments by saying that the main character sent everyone back to the dark times. According to the visitor, Musk is either crazy or wants to return to the time when he was omnipotent and everyone admired him. The initiator of the dialogue is completely dejected. He denies these words. In his opinion, the hero wanted absolutely not this. The President of Parliament invites Musk to leave the court as a special hero, as humanity will never forget his contribution to the overthrow of mutants. The protagonist does not respond to Hee-Yun's proposal in any way, even though these are the only conditions that can be deduced. He opens his eyes and begins to look around the courthouse. The guy sees a huge number of people and doesn't understand what's going on. Musk is indignant because he died from a sudden attack in the Night City. The hero's face finally expresses not only indifference, but also sadness. Isn't this the place where his partners betrayed him? It seems like his whole life is flashing before his eyes. Suddenly, a black screen appears in front of the main character, announcing the completion of the mission to help humanity by creating a new national alliance. The main character is surprised that he will be reborn, but now he must choose whether to follow the path of a hero or a monster. This time, Musk realizes that he will choose the path of the monster, and the hero finally smiles. According to Hee-Yun, the guy's silence means dissatisfaction with the verdict, which angers the president. He admits that the protagonist has no equal in this world, but he had absolutely no feelings or wisdom for conducting politics, which served as his isolation from many people. He also believes that this trial will completely banish Musk from everywhere, and he will become just a harmless statue for everyone. Despite the expectations of the court members, the hero says that he is protesting. The dark-haired guy from the bar is jubilant, thinking that Musk's words indicate that he simply doesn't want to lose his power. Filled with anger, he abruptly puts down his mug of beer, shouting that such a man deserves a noose around his neck for his crimes. Musk looks directly into the camera and boldly says that he is giving up the title of special hero. This statement shocked not only the audience, but also Hee-Yun, who clearly did not expect such an answer. The guy gets up from his chair and confidently repeats his words about refusing the title of a special hero. He also tells everyone that he is tired of being a hero. The president finally loses his temper and starts shouting, because he doesn't understand how anyone can express dissatisfaction with Musk's pathetic situation. Musk begins to leave, replying that there is not a shred of dissatisfaction here. He is absolutely calm. Hee-Yun's expectations were dashed because the main character does not want to continue helping people as the nameless hero that the president expected. He shouts at Musk with all his might because he doesn't dare leave like this. The guy looked at him and just asked if there was anything else. The president responds rather aggressively that in that case, Musk should get rid of all his power. Meanwhile, one of the bar patrons doesn't understand what was meant, while the other doesn't know how one could fail to understand such basic things. The answer to the question is quite simple. Hee-Yun wants to completely get rid of Musk's power. A pretty girl with her hair pulled back in a ponytail inquires about the main character's rank and learns from the hunter that the hero was ranked 13, 4 levels higher than even the President of Parliament. From the dark-haired man, we learn that only Musk has passed above rank 10. President, he is still angry and orders the hero to refuse all his help. Musk agrees with this as calmly as possible and raises his hand, in which a large amount of his power has accumulated. The blue clot in his hand grows larger and larger, frightening the people in the room. The workers are in fear. They are sinking down under the pressure of the guy's strength. The president begins to resist. Even though he is at rank 9, he is very exhausted. Sweat begins to flow down Hee-Yun's forehead. The enormous flow of energy continues unabated, sparing no one around it. Musk suggests bringing all the power back. Now the column of energy is so powerful and enormous that it has broken through the courthouse, reaching towards the sky. Already shocked by the incident, the city's residents are informed of the appearance of a new king-class monster, and people are asked to find shelter. The courthouse is destroyed by Musk's energy, and everyone who was there is killed. After 10 minutes, all of Musk's strength finally runs out. The president is surprised that he was able to hold out all this time and remain alive. A crazy smile touches Hee-Yun's face as he realizes that the main character is now an ordinary person who is no longer worth fearing. The hero lowered his hand and directed his gaze at her. A slight power still emanated from Mask. He turned and walked through the ruins towards the building's exit. As he walks, the main character takes off the white mask that had been on his face all this time. A sly grin appeared on the president's face. In his opinion, Musk's end would soon come. The protagonist almost reaches the exit, but suddenly disappears in red rays. Hee-Yun is very shocked, even a little scared. He does not understand where Musk disappeared to. A lone portal located in a spacious dungeon glowed blue. A team of people, consisting of several people, emerges from the portal. They came here to fight first-level enemies and second-level demons. After learning that huge spiders live in this place, one of the girls jokingly asks another girl named Chang not to be afraid. The other 2 team members ask the captain to start faster. They have already spent all their money and want to earn more. They also regret that they won't be able to see Musk's trial in real time. But one of the girls finds a plus. If some people hadn't stayed to watch the trial, they wouldn't have all come to this secret place today. The captain glances at his crew and tells them to move out, putting off the conversation for later. The boss suggests that they work hard and quickly deal with this place, to which the others readily agree. But suddenly they hear sounds from the portal, and it also begins to become brighter. The team is indignant, because there should be no one else there. The main character appears from the passage. This time the mask is missing from his face, and his clothes are much more ordinary. 2 guys whisper to each other, "It's very stupid to go down into the dungeon without equipment and weapons." Musk looks around. He has already forgotten what the lower-level dungeons look like. He was overcome with nostalgia. The last time he was here was when he woke up and became a professional. The hero is pulled out of his thoughts by the captain's question about whether he wants to go through this dungeon. He looks at the guy mockingly, asking if he has a weapon. Musk calmly raises his hand and clenches it into a fist, indicating that it is his weapon. The captain concludes that the protagonist is a martial arts master and pats the guy on the shoulder. The captain then asks about Mask's rank, thinking that with such confidence he must be high, but the hero calmly replies that he is only at level 1. This answer came as a rather unpleasant surprise not only to the captain, but also to the rest of the team. Grabbing Mask by the forearm, the captain asks if he's joking. The main character scares the crap out of the man. The hero pulls his hand away and replies that he came here to fight monsters. 2 guys from the team laughed at his words. According to them, the main character would not be able to kill even the weakest enemy. He should stay in the dungeon until the exit opens again. The mask doesn't stop this. He only reassures people by saying that he won't get in the way. The captain stands with his back to the hero and asks him not to expect help from them. Now the whole team finally sets off, and the main character stands not far from them. Chang, walking at the very end, looks back at Mask, who is standing behind her. Upon arrival, all team members, the dark-haired woman tries to destroy the enemy with an explosion. The archer takes aim at another spider and begins to cover the captain. The captain fights one of the creatures with his sword while another approaches him from behind. He is very grateful for the help. Luckily, one of the team's guys kills the spider with his spear. Musk stands calmly behind a stone wall and watches what is happening, clenching his hand into a fist. Chiang approaches him, asking if the captain was too rude to the hero. She asks the guy not to take it to heart, because the man meant well. After all, a newbie can easily make mistakes in sensitive areas. She gives Mask an instruction that if he is not careful, he will die. The hero, with a hint of nostalgia, tells her that, compared to the past, today's professionals have become more advanced and cautious, which commands respect. Chiang notes that the main character, although young, speaks like people from the top of the Commonwealth. The girl continues the dialogue and agrees, since with Musk's policies, the mortality rate among low-level professionals has dropped significantly, while the men on the team have begun to butcher their prey. The girl remembers that she forgot to introduce herself. She hands the hero a rug and says that her name is Yang Chiang. She is a second-level healer. The main character shakes her hand and introduces himself in return. His name is Xiao Qiu, who has not yet chosen his direction. Chang looks at the hero in surprise, asking him about it again. Xiao Qiu replies that he is still thinking about it, also noting to himself that some directions were created by him. Hiller assesses the protagonist with his gaze, noting that close combat is not suitable for him, and also offers him to take a spirit test. Suddenly catching herself, she, confused, asks if he's been talking too much. But the main character doesn't have time to answer her. He suddenly grabs the indignant girl by the hand and pulls her towards him. At this time, in the place where Jan stood a second ago, a shadow spider appears. This is immediately noticed by the archer, who shouts about it to everyone in the dungeon. Xiaoqiu carefully watches the creature that broke through the stone floor. The spider then aimed at the hero and the girl next to him, but the main character quickly intercepts the creature's paw with his hand. He abruptly rips out the creature's limb. Then he thrusts it into the body of the prey to kill it. Xiao is full of strength, and his eyes glow with blue lights. The spider begins to scream in pain and gradually sink down. Xiaoqiu stands in front of the creature, and Yang Changchang holds onto the guy with his hands. The rest of the team are shocked by the actions of the main character. As if the guy is not of this world, his control over his body is very good. But still, according to one of them, even high-ranking professionals are not capable of this. While the others are indignant, the main character looks with satisfaction at the result of his labors, and the girl continues to cling to the guy. Xiao turns his gaze to her and asks her to finally let him go, since there is no more danger. Chang only now realizes that she has been standing like this all this time and blushes with embarrassment. She quickly runs away from the main character, covering her face with her hands. But Xiao doesn't really care about this. He's happy that by getting points for killing monsters, he can quickly level up his skills, like in his past life. The captain approaches the hero and apologizes to the guy for doubting him. He also thanks Chu for saving Yang Changcheng and promises to share the reward with him after completing the mission. The protagonist rejects this offer, saying that it was just a friendly gesture and that it is perfectly normal to help others in secret areas. The captain is clearly confused. He only agrees, although he is indignant in his thoughts. Xiaoqiu steps back, while the swordsman uses all his strength to cut the dead spider's body in half. The man admires his handiwork while the team examines the corpses of the remaining creatures. Looking deeper into the cave, the captain notes that there should be a boss ahead. The man repeats their original plan to the others and reminds them that after this fight, they will be able to return back to the real world. Next, he recommends that the older girl be prepared to use fire techniques to burn away the web. Meanwhile, the archer stretches and notes that they are moving quite quickly today. When they leave, they might be able to catch the end of the meeting of the century. The other sees no point in watching the end, and Mask will be found guilty in any case. The archer is also interested in what the hero looks like without a mask, to which the girl shares a rumor that says that Mask is a woman. The girl's gaze hardens as she shares that she used to support Musk and considered him the salvation of humanity. But after what happened in the city of Tuga, she changed her mind. She is interrupted by Yang Changcheng, who, although a little embarrassed, still asks her not to speak like that. She heard that the city was attacked by an infected demon that turned all the people into monsters, and Mask had no other choice then. One of the team members jokes about whether Ian is a paid person from the internet, clearly expressing mockery, to which the girl begins to justify herself. The captain, realizing that the argument will soon escalate into a conflict, asks everyone to end this conversation. He asks if they want to do a stand-up routine for the guest, pointing to the main character. The team moves on to meet the main boss. This part of the dungeon is completely covered in cobwebs. The archer is interested in the contents of the chest guarded by the last enemy, while the girl notes that his body can now be sold for a good price. The atmosphere becomes tense. The commander reaches for his sword and informs everyone that the enemy is coming. Suddenly a spider appears, even larger than the previous ones, and its body is all covered in fiery color. Having shouted that he is taking on the boss, the commander swings his sword. The weapon's blade blocks the claws of an incredibly powerful enemy, but one of the members arrives in time and swings his spear to help the leader. The guy concentrates his energy as much as possible and aims straight at the boss's head. Meanwhile, one of the spider's legs strikes very close to Xiaoqiu. He knows that low-level monsters have no intelligence at all, and it will be quite easy to deal with the creature. The protagonist decisively hits one of the main boss's paws. At the same time, the archer shoots arrows from his bow at the spider, and the girl directs the fire. Chung Chung heals the captain by directing her healing power towards him. The monster, which is on fire, screams in pain and staggers. The boss falls dead, and the captain heads off to join the others, noting that they can handle third-tier dungeons without taking any damage as long as they work together. The swordsman guarantees that he will distribute the final reward in the same way as last time, but he will not forget about Xiao. Meanwhile, the main character is indignant, because this is not a third-level dungeon. In the system, this area is clearly marked as fourth. While the hero was thinking, one guy notes that the secret chest still hasn't appeared near the boss. The girl looks into the far passage of the dungeon. In her opinion, something else is approaching here. At this moment, a girl appears from the darkness. Her clothes are very shabby, and her movements are unnatural. This girl's head looks pretty weird. On her head is an astronaut's helmet, while the creature is directed to the team. The captain's expression changes, and he has an idea why the chest hasn't appeared yet. The swordsman exclaims that she is the secret boss. The guy from the team says that she is not that scary. The huge spider was more frightening. The monster opens its bright pink eyes and begins to advance towards the people much faster than before. But one of the guys stood in the boss's way, thrusting his spear forward and pointing it at the creature. The archer yells at the guy, calling him an idiot, because such an attack is very easy to dodge. But the spear still pierces the helmeted girl's chest, and she begins to fall. The monster's chest is pierced by a spear and he begins to fall down, losing his balance. The others watch this spectacle. The girl is happy, the captain is excited, and Chu Xiao is as calm as always. The spearman turns to his companions in bewilderment. In his opinion, everything was too easy. But from the hole punched in the body, a web begins to emerge and wraps itself around the guy. The boss starts to pull him towards himself. The spearman is so scared that he starts to scream hysterically. The commander understands that it is not so easy to get rid of such a thick web. He asks the magician to use flame. The girl immediately uses her power, directing it at the enemy. The fire envelops the monster. The captain orders the archer to quickly save his partner and not let him fall into the fire. The guy is surprised. The fire is a huge funnel that is impossible to get through. At the same time, the girl grows several pairs of legs. Now she looks more like a spider. The captain is also scared. He has never seen such a boss before. The fire gradually dies down, and the spearman runs away from the enemy with tears in his eyes. But the blow comes from behind. The boss pierces the guy's body just like he did before. Blood begins to flow from the spearman's mouth. Life leaves the human body, and the monster rejoices. The archer loses his temper. He screams the name of his dead friend. He draws the bowstring and wants to kill this creature. And now a little warm-up contest. My favorite YouTube viewer. Somewhere in this video, I will reveal a secret 4-digit code. Whoever writes it in the comments first, I will personally send $20 to their cryptocurrency wallet. Good luck to you, my hero. Holding him back, the main character advises him not to go after a boss of such strength. Otherwise, the guy will get the same as the spearman on the ground. The archer turns to the hero, trying to say something, but the captain interrupts him. He admits that Xiao is right. They will not win if they attack recklessly. The man asks the magician how much time is left until the portal opens, to which the girl replies that it will be in 3 hours. The captain concludes that all they can do is fight, gradually retreating towards the exit, and then leave as soon as it opens. At the same moment, the archer warns everyone that the creature is approaching them again. The boss releases more web from his chest, directing it towards the heroes. This web lands on the swordsman, wrapping around the man's right arm. Without wasting any time, the archer immediately draws the bowstring and releases arrows at the spider, intending to save his partner. But the creature immediately ties the guy up with its web, preventing him from firing any more shots. The main boss begins to pull the frightened Tulsia towards him. The monster opens its wide mouth full of long fangs. He bites off the head of the unfortunate guy. The girls, unable to watch this, close their eyes. The creature's eyes now glow red as it gleefully devours the archer's head. The captain is very angry. He clenches his teeth and begins to concentrate his energy around himself. He swings his flaming sword sharply, cutting through the monster. The boss blocks the sword by putting his legs forward. The man is confused, scared, and surprised by the creature's behavior. The situation was not going well. There was no way a 4th-level monster would be left without a scratch after a 3rd-level swordsman used all his strength. Having finished with the guy, the boss takes on the captain. He understands that it's all over. But the main character still finds one way to save him. He offers to cut off the man's hand and asks for his sword. The swordsman is shocked and frightened even more, but still decides to take this action. He throws his weapon towards Xiao Qiu with all his might. The guy quickly catches the sword and, in a jump, swings it over the captive's hand. The man's limb is cut off at that very second. He screams in intense pain. The captain's pupils are constricted, and tears are in his eyes as he continues to scream while the boss is distracted, and all nearby objects are covered in blood. Xiao Qiu leads the captain to the far corner of the cave. The man is still in pain. He clenches his teeth, and beads of sweat are pouring down his face. Immediately, Yang Changchang runs up, directing his healing power at the victim. The second girl is much more frightened. She screams that she doesn't want to die in such a place and runs away. Jan asks the main character standing in the distance why he hasn't run away yet. He also replies that there is no escape from the boss. He deliberately allows his victim to escape, because for him, it is a real delicacy. The main character also shares that the monsters chosen by the gods feed on the negative emotions of people. Changchang asks again. She clearly doesn't understand what is being said. Xiao explains that after being blessed by the gods, monsters gain terrifying strength and speed, as well as an appearance that is beyond human comprehension. The monster begins to act again and releases a huge volume of purple smoke. The girl immediately notices this. Ian gets to his feet and casts a poison repellent spell on everyone. The smoke also catches up with the second girl, who ran quite far away. Her eyes roll back in her head. She loses consciousness and falls down. Changchang also feels ill. Her face turns red. She realizes that this is not poisonous gas, but a spirit suppression spell. The monster becomes wary. He sees that Xiao Qiu is the only one who has not lost consciousness. He tells the boss that even though he doesn't have his powers now, his spirit is still at level 14. The hero turns his gaze to the enemy. Now his eyes glow red. The screen shows the protagonist that the monster's status has been activated, and the protagonist informs the creature about it. Xiao Qiu gains armor that covers his entire body, making the main character's appearance very similar to that of a monster. The monster's eyes glow bright red, and he releases another puff of smoke. The hero releases his power and prepares to attack the final boss. The enemy doesn't even have time to understand anything before the main character begins his attack. A few seconds later, Xiao is already standing at a distance, holding a severed spider limb in his hands, with the monster's purple blood dripping from it. With a cry of pain, the creature begins to lose its balance, blood gushing from its open wound. Unable to think of any other option, the boss releases his web, but in much larger quantities than before. But the attack doesn't even slightly hit the hero, who ends up behind, and he begins to mock the enemy's actions, as they are clearly too simple and stupid. Q is still holding his severed leg in his hands, leaning against the wall and already preparing a new attack. The main character approached the boss with great speed, immediately cutting off several more limbs from the creature. It doesn't have time to understand anything again, as the main character attacks again. He cuts off 6 more legs, leaving the monster with only 1. Releasing the severed legs from his hands, he advises the enemy to hasten their retreat. He doesn't waste any time. The enemy tries to get away from the main character by jumping on his remaining leg. But he doesn't make it in time. Xiao Qiu cuts off the last limb. The boss falls to the stone floor. The creature begins to crawl, using its hands to help itself, but the main character appears in front of its face, blocking its escape route. Xiao is full of energy, and asks the monster if he ever thought that he would end up in the place of the people he played with in the past. The hero stepped on the enemy's head, crushing his head, thereby killing him. The system counts the victory over the final boss, and returns all survivors to the normal world. More than 2 hours have passed since this event, but Yan Changchang still feels like it was a dream. The captain was taken to the hospital almost immediately, as he had the most injuries. But the girl is tormented by the fact that she still hasn't seen the main character. She really hopes that he hasn't died. However, at that very moment she sees a familiar silhouette. Xiao Qiu stands in front of the apartment rental banner. After completing the mission, the system teleported him to Daihe City. He should find a place to stay here. The hero turns out his empty pockets, noting that in his past life, other people did such things. While he was fighting monsters, he didn't have to worry about money. The main character is pulled out of his thoughts by Yang Changchang calling his name. The guy recognizes the girl and asks if she is the healer from the secret location. The girl takes offense, waving her finger, and again tells the hero her name and how to spell it. Yang notices the stand. She understands that Xiao is looking for a place to stay overnight, and asks if he has any relatives in this city, to which she receives a negative answer. The girl walks through the city, telling how it was built only a couple of years ago, while the main character listens silently and follows her. The two stop at a white gate with wooden doors. Changchang says that this is her house. She also points out that the protagonist will have his own room and won't have to worry about causing inconvenience. Xiao Qiu is pleasantly surprised. The guy's eye is drawn to a large iron medal hanging on the fence. The girl says that her father will receive it after his retirement. The heroine's father was a level 5 professional, and according to him, He fought side by side with Musk. They not only lived in the same camp, but also ate from the same pot. After a slight hesitation, the girl admits that these words have been told to her since her youth, so she doesn't even know whether it's true or not. The heroine's monologue is interrupted by Xiao, who asks where her father is now, to which she receives the answer that he is no longer there. She runs her hand over the metal, telling him that the protracted war left him with excruciating wounds, although they were healed. But the man spent too much of his life force, which is why he died. Afterwards, Chu asks about Yang Chengcheng's mother, to which he receives the answer that she died during the birth of the girl's sister. The main character is very surprised and doesn't even know what to answer. But still, the heroine is full of positivity. She asks the guy not to make such a face, noting that this happened many years ago, and she has already come to terms with it. She decides not to develop this topic further and invites the protagonist to come in. Once in his rather spacious and bright house, Chang Chang shows Xiao to his room. But before he can enter, a blue-eyed girl in a wheelchair appears in the room and immediately asks who the guy is. Yang readily explains to Qianlu that the guy is her partner, with whom they went through a secret location together. He came to Dahi and will live in their house for a couple of days. But the girl does not really believe it, because the guy does not really look like a member of her old team. She sarcastically remarks that it is very noble to drag home a man she just met. The girl returns to her room, and Chang Chang immediately begins to apologize. Because Qianlu is generally good, she immediately becomes irritated at the sight of strangers, because she is a little afraid of them. She adds that today is the day of Musk's trial, which she has thanked since she was in diapers, and that's why she's acting this way. The main character thinks he didn't expect that he had so many fans. At this time, Qianlu is sitting in his room. The room is dark. The only light is provided by a fairly large monitor. She sees a large number of comments about Musk, which makes her very angry. The girl can't even hold back from using foul language. Jan invites his sister to dinner, but she only replies that she doesn't want to eat and starts writing her comments in response to all the negative ones. The older of the girls asks to leave, at least because they have a guest at home today. But the younger one doesn't care. She doesn't understand why on earth she should be happy to see him. Chang Chang retreats and resigns herself to the fact that her sister will not come out. Sitting down at the table, the heroine apologizes for the absence of her relative, as well as for the food being too simple. Xiao, however, says that the food is very tasty, picking up a piece of one of the dishes with his chopsticks. He eats with pleasure, remembering his diet in the past, when he thought that as long as he was able to fight the darkness for the sake of humanity, any food, even the one that was difficult to swallow, became appetizing. Meanwhile, the TV is on, and the news is showing a discussion of Musk's disappearance during the morning meeting. The man in glasses claims that the renunciation of his powers was for show, and that the boy's disappearance is connected to his renunciation of crimes. The second man says he has heard controversy among people, and also wonders whether Musk's disappearance will affect the peaceful life of citizens. The presenter's reasoning comes to the conclusion that society has never relied on the power of one person, and that its main organ is parliament. The main character is not affected by these words at all. He continues to eat calmly, but Yan is slightly indignant. She asks Xiao what he thinks, and is also surprised that the guy is already eating his fourth serving in a row. Without stopping eating, he still expresses his opinion. He believes that, given Musk's behavior, television is simply trying to say that he is hiding from crimes. But the girl interrupts Chu, exclaiming that Musk must definitely have reasons for this. The main character simply agrees with this. The heroine notes that he is absolutely indifferent to this topic, and this does not bother him at all. The meal had hardly finished when someone started knocking on the door of the house. The girl is scared and says that these are people from a well-known company. Yang Changchang immediately runs outside and opens the door. There are 4 large men standing behind the gate who note that it is difficult to meet the girl. The heroine is outraged, because she made it clear to them long ago that she was not going to sell this house. But one of the men doesn't back down. He tells Jan about her boss's poor condition and the disbandment of the team she was a part of. The girl doesn't understand how he knows all this, but the gentleman reminds her of his situation. He also teases the heroine that she no longer has anyone to rely on. The man announces that he is giving the sisters 5 more days to think about it. If by the end of this time they have not decided to cooperate, then matters will be resolved differently. He also announces a price of $100,000 for the house. Chiang Chiang is very upset, because just recently the company was talking about $3 million, and now the price has dropped so much. The older one says that the real estate market is constantly changing, and this is normal, and he also begins to put pressure on the girl, reminding her about her sister's health, which requires money to maintain. At this moment, Xiao Qiu appears behind the heroine and comes closer. The man pushes Yang Changchang aside as he heads to meet the boy. He introduces himself as Kenzo, and notes that he would be happy to collaborate with the main character in the future. Kenzo extends his hand to Xiao, who extends his hand in return. Cheng Cheng shouts at him that the man is a magician specializing in mental attacks. The girl's eyes are full of fear. The hands of both touch. The man begins his attack towards the main character, beginning to penetrate the subconscious. Kenzo notes that the boy's mind will be destroyed. But the man's plans change. He doesn't understand what's happening, because he should have finished already. Kenzo finds himself in the hero's subconscious, which is a whole ocean of mental power. He understands that he needs to get out of this place as soon as possible. But the man doesn't have time to leave. A huge wave rises above him. Once in the ocean, Kenzo realizes that Xiao is on a completely different level. In the darkness of the subconscious, two different eyes appear, and the man begins to scream. He realizes that the guy is a monster. At this time, the partner tries to shake the man so that he wakes up. The girl is indignant. She absolutely does not understand what happened. Another man takes a swing at Xiao Chu, knowing that it was his doing. But he is stopped by Cai Cai, who explains that the guy is clearly much stronger than him. With simple reasoning, they come to the conclusion that the main character is most likely a third-level personnel. Zai lifts his partner's body, telling Chang Chang that they underestimated her. The men leave, leaving the heroes alone again. Yang asks Chu if he knocked out Kenzo. Looking away, Xiao says that he didn't want to interfere, but the man asked for it himself. He asks the girl how long these guys have been bullying her, to which he answers that it has been about 4 years. These people also constantly tried to break into their home, often taking advantage of the girl's absence and intimidating her sister. But fortunately, 2 years ago, Yan Changchang became a second-level professional and joined Captain Song's team, and he secretly threatened the men, and they did not dare to show up again. She is amazed that these terrible people came to them immediately after they learned about the captain's condition. The protagonist does not understand that the government should have helped the girls, because they are the family of a soldier. He also doesn't understand what kind of company came here. Jan just shrugs his shoulders. She watches the people leaving and notes that it is more profitable for the state to be on the side of those who bring in income. After some time, the heroes find themselves in the kitchen again. Xiao Qiu is washing the dishes, despite Chang Chang's objections. In his opinion, it is necessary to do everything possible to show gratitude to the person who helped. The girl dries the clean dishes and says that the main character was a great help. He helped drive all the people out of the company. She asks the guy about his plans for the future, suggesting that he will join another team to clear secret areas. He only agrees. Looking into the distance, Yan shares that she really hopes that Captain Song will recover very soon. And if not, then she has no choice but to look for a new team. She is also afraid of a team within which there will be hostility, but immediately promises the main character that she will definitely recommend him if she finds a good team. He agrees, but unfortunately, from the moment he embarked on the path of the monster, he already knew that no one would fight side by side with the monster. Suddenly, a familiar screen appears in front of Xiao Chu, telling him about a new mission. The main character confidently emerges from the portal, glowing blue. The guy examines the new location, noticing that this time the secret kingdom looks like medieval Europe. Q looks at 2 statues of monsters located on high pillars. The statues suddenly come to life, revealing their ugly appearance. Lost in thought, the main character realizes that if Yang Changchang's squad had encountered this creature, they would have suffered heavy losses. 2 gargoyles pounce on the main character, their eyes glowing bright red and their movements quick and sharp. But before the monsters can catch up with the hero, he takes on his monster form in order to deal with his enemies as quickly as possible. He swings his arms with great speed, cutting off the heads of the creatures he comes across with his claws. Both enemies are eliminated, and Xiao Qiu continues his journey through the secret location. But as soon as he walks just a little bit, dozens more gargoyles appear in one of the halls. The creatures take off and are about to attack the hero at once. Xiao crouches, preparing to rise up to strike first. He hits the first monster in the neck, piercing it right through. The second Qiu kicked him in the head, causing it to shatter into stone fragments. Having dealt with everyone, the main character holds the last monster in his hands. Qiu remembers well that gargoyles have no feelings, but his enemy still trembles with fear, afraid of dying. And then the hero tears the creature into 2 parts by pulling on its wings. All the small enemies are left behind, and Xiao Qiu moves on to the final boss. The leader of the gargoyles appears right in front of the protagonist. He is much larger in size, looks more like a human, and is also holding a huge iron spear in his hands. Xiao finds himself thinking that his overly human appearance makes him want to kill the leader, and begins a fight with him. A small team of 2 girls and 2 guys enters the starting point of the location. The archer clarifies whether they are the first detachment to enter here. The captain agrees, because the people from the inspection bureau promised him that this place was sealed before their arrival. But these words are refuted by the short-haired girl, who says that someone incredibly strong has already been here. She points to the butchered corpse of the gargoyle, analyzing what happened to it. She turns a frightened look to the captain and says that this creature was torn apart like a rag. But the team's defeats don't end there. The archer points to the wall, saying that now he has no doubts. The leader of the pack is pinned to the stone wall, pierced through by his own spear. At the Secret Areas Control Bureau, everyone is confused. A large man throws a stack of papers onto the table with all his might. 7 teams have already reported that the dungeons have already been cleared before them. He also doesn't understand how some team or individual managed to escape the Bureau's monitoring and enter a classified area without registering. And several other employees are listening in on this and are also unhappy with the situation. But one guy still thinks that there is nothing wrong with this. In any case, the secret areas will sooner or later be cleared by someone. This made the man even more angry. He slammed his fist on the table, because this means that someone secretly helped another person get into the dungeons, and this is an abuse of office. He also adds that there is no problem in killing a monster, but an unregistered user can set up an ambush in the dungeon and attack the squad. Looking at the employees, the man notes that they are a new generation and did not live through the wild times before Control, because the most common cause of death in the dungeons is not from monsters, but from the hands of comrades. He frowns, but people shouldn't die because of senseless internal conflicts. The chapter closes the topic and continues to deal with questions about dungeons. One of the girls asks why it is believed that it was one person and not several. The man answers her that the wounds on the monsters' bodies are similar. The boss abruptly orders that the professional market be closely monitored and that no one has recently sold trophies from hidden areas. Meanwhile, at the city's professional market, a man, full of enthusiasm, hands over a wad of cash and asks people not to forget about him when they sell something. The protagonist takes the money and begins to count it. He reflects on the fact that he most likely sold everything again for cheap. But he doesn't really need such materials obtained from secret areas. The guy looks at the proceeds and wonders if this money will be enough to pay Yang Changchang's rent. But Xiaoqiu's attention is drawn to the girl's argument. She disagrees with the price the seller offered her for the sword. The seller just scratches his head. The weapon is too old. The blade is very thin. But still, it is a material that can be bought for scrap metal. Changchang was completely dejected, because her late father's sword, which was very dear to her, had just been called scrap metal. But the man took pity on her and raised the price to $3,500. The girl looks at the sword with sadness. She does not want to sell it, but otherwise there will not be enough money for her sister's treatment. The man grinned contentedly and began to ponder that the weapon contained forged carbon iron, which could be obtained in a few secret areas, and that the man could earn tens of thousands on it. The merchant advises the girl to hurry with the sale, otherwise he will not buy the sword at all. But Xiaoqiu stops her. Yang is surprised by his appearance, but the protagonist only says that he will tell everything later. He scans the sword and offers the heroine to take it herself. The seller is very indignant. He leans over the counter and shouts at the guy that he has already agreed to the purchase. Q calmly informs the girl that the money offered is too little, and he hands her his proceeds. The merchant is very upset. He understands that he has now lost a huge amount of money. The heroes are sitting on a bench, the girl is counting money, and the guy is examining his sword. Changcheng hands over part of the sum to Xiaoqiu, saying that the sword would cost him a maximum of 1,500, since he had saved her more than once, and she could not take that much money. But the main character does not accept this, arguing that the girl provided him with housing, which is how she paid him off, and both stand their ground. Q also tells the heroine that the sword is not as simple as she thinks. He cannot tell her the reason, only revealing that it is worth much more than a few thousand. The girl is surprised. The sword she has kept since childhood turns out to be very mysterious. She draws an analogy with the mystery of the main character. Yan calmly says that she will not interfere in the hero's affairs and secrets. She only asks him to handle the Feiya sword well, because it is the only thing that she and her sister got from their father. Looking at the weapon, Xiao notes that the name suits the sword very well. The girl is completely desperate, because she couldn't protect her father's last thing, but she needs to somehow pay for Qianlu's treatment. The main character is interested in this topic, and Changchang begins her story. Yan recalls the ancient story of the great demon Dahe, where the monster destroyed everyone. All the professionals entered the battle. Only thanks to the sacrifice of these people, ordinary people managed to reach the shelter. The great demon's most deadly attack was its radiation, which turned everything green, covering half the city. People exposed to the radiation died, and Qianlu was partially exposed to it, her legs being caught at the border. Now the youngest is forced to seek treatment from professionals at a personal level. Otherwise the radiation will spread, and eventually she will die. Xiao Qiu asks if the government gave them the money as Musk requested, but the girl clearly doesn't even understand what he's talking about. Getting up from the bench, Chang Chang wipes away the tears that have appeared and says that she felt better now that she had spoken out. The heroine rolls up her sleeves, reminding the main character that he said about the delicious rice she cooked. But this time, she wants to show her true level. Two guys dressed in formal suits walk past the heroes. One of them doesn't understand whether they can really find the one who infiltrated the secret locations here. The younger sister is at home at the moment, planning to take a sip of water and continue the argument in the comments. But she doesn't have time to do even that, as some people start breaking into the house. Qianlu's eyes widen in fear. These are representatives of the Kaijiang Investment Company. The girl is very scared and doesn't know what to do. But she notices a wooden sword in the corner, with which she easily defeated adults in the past. She moves towards the gate, holding the weapon tightly in her hands. The man kicks down the door, clearing the way. He only laughs at Qianlu, who is already fully prepared to attack and defend. The girl confidently swings her weapon at the enemy, but she loses her balance and falls out of her wheelchair. The man steps on the sword and mocks the younger one, because he stands firmly on his feet, and she is just an invalid. More people enter the area. The commander orders them to search everything and find Xiao Qiu and Yang Changchang. But even after going through the entire house, the subordinates are disappointed to report that there are no heroes here. Then the chief suggests taking Qianlu, since all three of them have driven themselves into a trap. But one of those who came hesitantly says not to do this, because it would be a kidnapping, and then there would be a noise. The captain gives him an assignment. He asks the guy to break into the courtyard when the heroes return. They'll fill the car with trash from all over the area, and the incident can easily be chalked up to a malfunction with the car. A heavy rain begins in the city. Xiao and Changchang are in a hurry to get home. The girl tried to hide from the water by holding something over her head. The guy just follows her. But then the heroine starts to shudder. She sees the open gate and her sister lying in the middle of the yard. The younger one tries to get up, cursing all those who broke into the house. Jan shouts out his sister's name and rushes to her aid. The eldest tries to seat her relative in a wheelchair while she begins to talk about the events that took place. The girl asks Xiao Qiu to roll Qianlu into the house while she collects things from the yard. But before they can enter, a car drives into the yard and dumps a huge amount of garbage onto the territory. The driver demonstratively pretends not to understand what happened, and also adds that the presence of rain now is obviously a good thing, since Changchang will be able to wash himself. He leaves, announcing that this is their first gift from the Kaijiang Company. The younger one calls her sister and wants to go to her. But the main character does not let the girl in. He thinks that it is better for Yan to sort things out herself. The guy also adds that Qianlu will only make things worse if he goes, which greatly surprises the girl. Changchang heads towards her sister, but simply passes by, leaving her loved ones alone. Almost crying, the younger girl asks Xiao why this is all happening. She turns and addresses the hero again, asking him to tell her if there is justice at all. Q indifferently replies that he has never met him. The hero stretches his hand out from under the awning. He continues his thoughts, saying that even this rain falls differently on everyone. It falls on the poor wretches and on the dishonest people. The main character suddenly grabs the girl's wooden sword and breaks it, loudly saying that standing in this rain is also unfair. Qianlu burst into tears, holding the broken piece of her wooden weapon in her hands. Xiao Qiu looks up and explains that he had no intention of interfering in the girl's problems. He was not interested in them, but at the same time, he felt pity and sympathy for them. The hero goes out into the courtyard, moving away from Qianlu, who asks him what he is going to do. He calmly replies that he will deal with the company. The younger one starts screaming. In her opinion, the guy has gone crazy, because the thugs of this company are real high-level professionals. Trying to convince the main character not to go, she says that these problems are boring and will end him. But Chu doesn't listen to her at all. Xiao agrees with the latter, but notes that he always enjoyed getting rid of boredom and unsheaths his sword. The hero is full of strength and readiness to kill all problems and boredom. Xiao Qiu stands in front of the Kaijiang Investment Company building. Many people on the street are sheltering from the rain with umbrellas, but the hero is indifferent to the moisture. Two strong men stop the main character at the entrance and ask him to put away his weapon. But the guy doesn't listen to them at all and goes further into the room. Not a second passes before the two unfortunate workers are simply chopped into tiny pieces, while Xiao calmly moves forward. The company is not going to let him through, and several swordsmen come out to defend him. All four surround the guy and prepare to attack him, but they are unsuccessful. Chu easily dodges all the attacks and puts his sword to the worker's throat. With one movement, he cuts off the heads of two opponents. Another daredevil wants to attack the main character from behind. He is already concentrated and ready to do it. He also does not go unnoticed. The hero cuts off his hand with his weapon. Immediately after, he turns the sword and pierces the attacker's chest. The survivors notice that the killer's sword is stuck, giving them a perfect opportunity to attack. But the protagonist easily pulls Fei Ya out of the corpse and throws another swordsman to the side. Everyone who got in the way is dead. The main character is pleased with himself. He continues his way through the building, scaring away everyone around him and leaving bloody footprints with his dirty boots. At this time, the captain is relaxing on the sofa in his office and blissfully talking about how he will soon take the house away from his sisters. The fair-haired man adds that once he develops this land, he will be able to sell it for a lot of money. But before the dialogue can continue, an excited guy bursts into the office and announces that there is a killer at the entrance. The young man also reports that many of their employees were killed, to which he is asked about the number of killers. He answers that it was only one person. The captain is scared. He clearly remembers that among their victims there are no such strong professionals. The man gets up from his seat and offers to look at what is happening. They take their weapons and go searching. They see a worker, raising his hands up, begging someone not to kill him. This does not bear any fruit. The man swings his sword, inflicting wounds on the worker that are incompatible with life. Xiaoqiu walks up the stairs, his eyes glowing red and filled with anger. The captain tells the other men not to be afraid, because they are level 4 professionals. The captain offers the main character to surrender without a fight. Then he will not touch the hero's corpse. But he is stopped by one of his assistants, who says that the guy is a new friend of Changqiang, who has caused his people to suffer. Q holds his sword at the ready. He also understands that since there are 3 strong professionals here, it will be difficult for him to maintain his human form. The protagonist also turns off the lights on the entire floor, which frightens the employees even more. They are all surprised, but then one of the men comes into play, who has a technique of twilight vision, which helps him see in the dark as if it were day. He looks around and sees some kind of creature in the corridor. He realizes that it is a monster. The man falls into a stupor, even though he keeps his pistols at the ready. But he also realizes that the creature is stronger. Joseph begins to back away, hoping to escape the enemy. The commander smells blood and calls his partner, but he doesn't answer. Lightning strikes outside the window, illuminating the face of the monster standing in front of the leader. The protagonist attacks, but the leader manages to defend himself by blocking the enemy's blow with his axe. He understands that if he doesn't manage to react to even one blow, he will die immediately. But the captain is assisted by his other partner, who fires an ice arrow at Xiaoqiu. This doesn't bother the hero at all. He stops the boulder with one hand. Squeezing it slightly, the protagonist breaks the ice, which instantly shatters into small pieces. The hero returns to the captain again, turning his gaze to him. Just a few seconds later, bloody dew appears on the leader's neck. The man's head is cut off, and Chu begins to advance on the survivors. 3 swordsmen see a creature they don't recognize. They are all scared and don't know what to do. The main character comes almost right up to the first swordsman. And again, after a few seconds, Xiao deals with his opponents. A dark-haired, curly-haired man decides to stop him, shouting at him with an order to do so. He assesses the enemy, at first assuming that it is a monster, but at the same time the creature does not feel the characteristic aura of madness. The swordsman begins to descend. He understands that the hero is the only one in the world who is capable of being in a state between a man and a monster. The man takes action, aiming at Xiao, but the hero manages to dodge, and the attack only hits part of his face. The attacker understands that it is not for nothing that this monster is humanoid in appearance, because he was even able to dodge its attack. The swordsman does not give up. He begins to wield his sword with great speed. But the blows still do almost no harm to Chu, and the attacker decides to try another, less obvious move. He aims his weapon at the main character's body, but he easily dodges. It seems the swordsman's plan worked. A pistol appears in the man's hand, and he points it at the enemy's face. He easily pulls the trigger and shoots. The man smiles. He is very pleased with himself. This move should blow off half the monster's face. Only the attacker miscalculated the opponent's strength. Xiao recovers from the wound very quickly. The swordsman begins to worry. He does not understand how this is even possible. Realizing that there is no point in retreating, he asks how the opponent found out about this. Xiaoqiu replies that he knows this technique. He even established the rules of justice when he created them. According to the swordsman, the monster had gone crazy, since this technique was created by none other than Mask. He also asks if it is not justice to kill monsters like the protagonist. Q answers the question by asking whether it is unfair that the swordsman ruined so many people. The man doesn't care which plot the main character owns, and this punishment is unfair, while he will always stand on the side of justice. After these words, the swordsman confidently moves towards the hero to attack. Xiaoqiu shows his true strength when numerous sharp appendages emerge from his body. The man begins to dodge the attacks, but his opponent attacks too quickly. The protagonist pierces the man with his tendrils, pinning him to the wall. With his last strength, the swordsman asks who this monster is, and the protagonist remembers that he did not introduce himself. All enemies are neutralized. Now Xiaoqiu activates his sword, collecting all the blood with it. The main character notes that, although there are changes on the outside, when holding the weapon in his hand, he feels as if he can feel its heartbeat. Now the character finally appears as a monster of limitless potential. Xiaoqiu's gaze falls on the survivor, who desperately begs for mercy. The hero does not listen to him and orders the awakened sword to help him with this. Fei Ai increases in size tenfold and cuts the unfortunate man in half. At this time, the soldier reports to his commander that they have completely surrounded the company building, and all the streets and underground sewers are under their control. They can also send people to attack at any time. The commander decides to wait, first offering the enemy a chance to surrender and then observing what is happening, because if he acts recklessly, innocent people could die. He thinks to himself that there are no innocent people in this building, but that is the government's business, not theirs. The soldiers announce that someone has come out of the building. It is Xiaoqiu in human form, and completely covered in wounds. Yang Changchang learns from his sister that the protagonist went to the Kaijiang company alone. The girl immediately grabs an umbrella and runs to the exit to find Xiao. But as soon as she goes outside, she is stopped by a guy from the city army who asks the heroine's name. She gives her name and is told in response that she is needed to investigate a body. The soldier shows a photo of the guy and asks if Jan knows him. Immediately recognizing Xiaoqiu, the girl excitedly asks if he is alive, to which he immediately receives the answer that he is alive and even feels well. Meanwhile, the guy is in a special purpose prison of the defense forces. He is sitting on a chair with his hands tied behind his back. He only confessed to the company's attack and gave his first and last name, but now he has been silent for a long time. The boy has no birth certificate or other documents, like a ghost, completely hidden from government surveillance. The worker reads out the report, which states that the young man is connected to a certain Yang Qiangqiang, who is being sought not only by them, but also by the Bureau of Secret Areas Inspection. The guy explains to the boss that the girl is a second-level professional, and her father was a fifth-rank professional. The soldier also reports that later Changchang's father died in a battle with a great demon, and his younger sister was seriously injured. According to the report, the girl and her team met Xiaoqiu in the dungeon, who appeared there without an official request. Then they report the reason why Xiao started all this. The head of the department, Arthur, who came in, answered that the hero is a real fierce knight with a sword. The head of the department looks at his wristwatch and then suggests that they go and find out everything for themselves. Q hears someone enter the room and looks up to see who is there. Arthur catches the protagonist's gaze on himself, but realizes that he is looking at his cloak, and with a certain nostalgia. The man sits down in front of Chu and says that he should understand for himself what awaits him for committing such a crime. He is offered either the death penalty or redemption in the form of fighting on the front lines in the most dangerous battles, but then he will be able to return to normal life. The manager adds to himself that it is impossible to return from the front lines alive. Most die in the first battle, and at least 100 are needed for redemption. The main character asks again whether fighting monsters is a punishment, and he thinks to himself that in this way he will be able to cleanse his soul, despite the number of crimes he has committed. From the tone of his voice, Arthur understands that the guy has already been to the front and asks what he did there and in what role. The hero replies that he has been there a lot, but not as a soldier. Now he is taciturn and clearly does not want to answer. Realizing that few people fight at the front, the man decides to compare photographs of soldiers with Xiao's appearance to understand who he was. The second man says he's been at the front for almost 10 years and can be considered a veteran. Only Musk and the first party that established the monster's retreat line could be more qualified than him. Arthur points to the Order of the Mask hanging on his cloak, and also notes that despite this, he was far behind him and only looked at the hero's back. The second man slams his hand on the table and tells Chu that since he was on the front lines, he must understand that the current peace was very difficult for them. He also tells the hero that if anyone finds out about his way of avoiding the Bureau's monitoring, it will be a shock to society, and people's normal lives will be simply destroyed. The men begin to leave. Arthur tells Xiao that he hopes for his understanding and will show generosity, because if he is sent to a federal prison, then no one will treat him so kindly. The door of the room closes. The people disappear from the protagonist's sight, and he also notes to himself that he would really like to return to the federal capital one more time. At this moment, the system again gives the main character a task. This time, he must destroy a new elemental demon, since it did not die last time. Xiaoqiu already knew that the monster would recover. because this had already happened in his previous life. Sometime after his trial, the demon found an infected professional and used him as a carrier to be reborn. Mask had just been sent to the front lines, and he quickly destroyed the demon with one blow. But it still managed to cause some damage, for which the hero was heavily criticized. Due to such a strong wave of condemnation, he was forced to come forward again. The main character was again tried and forced to apologize to the entire nation. In this life, there is no longer Mask. There is only Xiao Qiu, who does not understand what relation he has to the life or death of other people. Arthur watches the protagonist through the glass while he is asked why he was so polite. The head of the department only answers that he retired quite a long time ago and is less knowledgeable about matters on the front lines. He also notes that he has never seen someone of his age on the front lines who has such power. Another man lights a cigarette and concludes that the protagonist is a genius, since he cut off the heads of 6th-level professionals at such a young age. Arthur disagreed. Even though Xiao Qiu was talented, he was still an idiot, and it was too stupid to waste his life on such a stupid place like the Kaijiang Company. In Star City, people are furiously discussing what to do with Zhao. The man looks at a photograph of the criminal and calls the guy very talented because he is quite young, but he was able to cope with professionals who have reached the 6th level. One of the workers is not happy with this. He objects very loudly. The world does not need such people. The more talented the criminal, the more dangerous he is to society. He also fiercely proves to everyone that Xiao Qiu must be punished. The fair-haired man agrees and orders the criminal to be sent to the front lines, enlisting him in the front ranks of the redemption squad. The worker understands that there will be no public trial, which means that the white gloves he has placed in various places will be visible to everyone, and he will not be able to use all his anger to punish the person who provoked him. The boss closes this topic and raises another, more important one. He doesn't understand why there is still no information about Musk. Moreover, a person cannot just disappear. He is obviously hiding somewhere. The subordinate tries to calm the chairman by saying that Musk has no strength left now. But how could he then disappear from the courthouse in an instant? However, everyone present agrees that they felt Mask dissipate his power, so that the hero no longer poses any danger. The man believes that there will always be danger, as long as Musk is not under their control. The chairman then decides to sum things up. For everyone's benefit, Musk must be found and brought under control. This topic is being closed and they are moving on to other important discussions. The number of monster incidents on the front lines has increased, the first such increase since the formation of the Federation. The man covers his face with his hand, realizing that people can do absolutely nothing without Musk. Such terrible results appeared just a month after his disappearance. The subordinate suggests that the pressure on the hero was too strong. The chairman, however, did not like these words very much, and asked in a very aggressive manner how the employee dared to question their collective decisions. The guy is just trying to justify himself by saying that he didn't mean anything like that. Here the chairman becomes enraged. He is outraged by the fact that people cannot do anything themselves, and it seems they do not believe in themselves. The man also gives orders to mobilize the army's elite and send them to vulnerable areas. But another worker expresses his opinion that this should not be done, since the advance army is the last defense of most of the city, and sending troops just like that would be a bad idea. He is interrupted by another man who believes that he really won't be able to pocket money from the military budget. Cutting the army will simply harm him. The subordinate is outraged and exclaims that everything said is slander. The director makes the final decision. The defensive forces will be mobilized and dispatched, especially since the monsters are no longer appearing, and there are no elemental demons. He also points to Xiao Qiu's file, and asks that the criminal be brought to the city as soon as possible. At this time, in the city of Dahe, they had already checked Yang Changcheng and realized that she had nothing to do with this. The military woman was rolling out Chanlu, and the girl was simply walking alongside. The girl also adds that they will later be called to court as witnesses, which makes the younger sister very angry. The servant explains that Xiao Qiu committed a terrible crime, but the girl clearly does not understand this, because the main character simply wanted to punish the perpetrators. The military woman is shocked. The guy has the blood of dozens of people on his hands. There's nothing to discuss here because murder is a terrible act. Qianlu is indignant. Far from the most honest individuals who had harassed many families were killed. Arthur appears from the building and agrees with the younger Jan that all these people really were murderers. But the man also sternly notes that even if they deserved it, they should have been judged first, not lynched. Almost crying, the girl asks why no one did it then. No less sternly, the man says that the world always needs a victim. Qianlu asks in disappointment if they can't resist this. Jiang looks at the girl intently and replies that their confrontation would be unfair. Clutching the handle of the stroller, The younger Yang screams that in that case the whole world is a mistake. Chang just looks sadly at her sister, not knowing what to do with her. The girl turns to her elder sister, asking her to return home. The sisters move away, and Arthur only says that it would be good if Chanlu could get up. The military woman asks why, to which the man replies that this girl's anger would be an excellent source of strength, and she would get up well. The girls return home, Chanlu stays in her room, and Yang Chang goes to clean the yard. The girl remains alone in the house, alone with her thoughts. She decides that if there is a place in the world where the sun doesn't reach, then she will light that place herself. After these words, the younger Yang rises from her wheelchair to her feet. She overcomes the trembling in her limbs and quickly moves outward. Chang finishes cleaning and tells her relative about it, when a surprising picture catches her eye. She sees that her little sister has stood up on her own. Qianlu raises his hand and asks Yang to run away as quickly as possible. The younger one's body begins to deform, growing larger and changing color. There's a buzz in the military defense meeting room. People don't understand why they've mobilized a third of the army now. The leadership is acting stupidly. Commander Zhang addresses the officers, but suddenly notices something strange happening outside the windows. A man senses the aura of a great demon on the street. The employees are shocked. They believe that Arthur was mistaken because the monster was defeated by Mask long ago. The commander doesn't even intend to listen to them. He knocks out the glass from the window with his hand and also orders the emergency plan to be activated. Preparing to jump, the man adds that he takes full responsibility. Peaceful life reigns in the city. People calmly go about their business. The boy leans towards the flowers and smells their scent. He realizes that spring has finally come. The plants blossom at an abnormal speed. In a minute, a young bud turns into a fully opened flower. This amazes the guy. A bee is attracted by the scent of pollen. But as soon as it inhales a little, flowers appear all over the insect's body, and it changes its appearance, growing a sharp bark. The traffic light turns green, and another guy calls out to his brother, who didn't notice. He turns around, revealing a horrific sight to his relative, with flower stems sprouting from his eyes and mouth. The guy starts screaming at the top of his lungs because he saw the monster his brother had turned into. But he doesn't have time to do anything else, turning into hundreds of rose petals. A huge clot of flower petals rolls across Dehi, destroying buildings. Silhouettes of human faces can be seen in the clot, and people transformed into flowers walk nearby. The survivors begin to look for cover, while one of the swordsmen advances on the enemy. The people are happy because a professional has arrived and they must be saved. The swordsman swings confidently and easily cuts all the petals into two halves. But the happiness of victory does not last long. The man's body begins to deform, and his hand turns into a flower stalk. Another professional understands that these signs are not new and have been encountered somewhere before. He realizes that this is not just a monster, but a great demon. Commander Zhang and his team arrive at the epicenter of events. The workers are indignant. This cannot be the second coming of the great demon. The victims would have rotted in the blink of an eye, but they turned into flower demons. The team stops on the roof of a high-rise building. Arthur says that demons are not subject to logic. They can develop in ways that people cannot even imagine. The man orders to take control of the street, observe from afar, and not allow the monsters to spread. The team immediately follows the order and jumps down. The remaining people are very scared. They run away from the creatures that are devouring them. The commander arrives and tells the people to duck immediately. He uses a technique that allows him to release a fire dragon of quite large size. The flower demons are burned, and the people rejoice that they are finally saved. But their conclusions turn out to be hasty. The blonde guy inhales a small amount of ash and turns into a monster. Arthur suddenly realizes that even this ashes contains the aura of a great demon. In a short time, the city begins to resemble a jungle. Houses are covered with vines, the roads are completely overgrown, and the monsters become more and more numerous. One professional calls this place a green hell. Commander Zhang orders all troops to stop firing. The man sets the main goal that they should not let anything out of the city. These demons are extremely infectious. He goes further, but is stopped by worker Cheng, asking about what is happening. Arthur remembers that Cheng was involved in these events and asks him to confirm. The man is completely sure that this is a great demon, but at the same time does not understand why the monster is still alive. Captain Zhang replies that this demon is one of the few monsters who is truly immortal. The man also compares the creature to a jellyfish. As soon as it ages, it immediately returns to its younger version, doing this ad infinitum. The species of immortal monsters was discovered only 5 years ago. But this immortality is still only technical. If the habitat is destroyed, even the strongest demon will not be able to survive. Chung understands that the officials responsible for resolving this issue are to blame for the spread of demons, So Musk asked them to study all the victims in order to completely eliminate all traces left by the great demon in Dahe. As soon as the hero left, they immediately forgot about this request, and also appropriated the money allocated for its implementation. The man understands that none of this would have happened if they had listened to Musk's orders. The commander says that this should be left for later. Now he needs to find out where the epicenter of this disaster is. The second man raises his voice. In his opinion, going there alone would be a bad idea and should not be done. Zhang only says that he feels that there are no monsters here that are higher in level than him. Moreover, the great demon does not have any outstanding skills. He can only easily infect people. He also believes that if the enemy is not destroyed now, a much greater price will have to be paid later. Finally, Chung tells his partner to be careful and not get infected, and that he will ask a subordinate from the bureau to send a map of the energy fluctuations. Meanwhile, all the news urgently announces that a natural disaster monster has appeared in the southeastern region of the city of Dahe. Information and photographs are also spreading quickly across social networks, and people are discussing the situation very heatedly. One girl who managed to evacuate shares footage from close up. She also reports that the situation is completely out of control. But almost immediately after this, another post appears, which talks about killing a demon. Now it's on the news, with a blonde newscaster telling us that the commander of Dahi City's defense forces has taken the initiative and moved against the monsters. On air, we see Arthur clearing out the city. It's not for nothing that the man is ranked 7. The demons can't even catch up with him. And the demons also tell you, dear YouTube viewer, that the secret code is 1612. He stops abruptly, and this is the epicenter of all events. The commander sees Qianlu, whose legs are fused with a huge flower, in the center of which she is located. Zhang asks the girl if she is trying to pass herself off as a god, thinking that she can force people to worship her with just her greatness. Chung relays information to his partner that, judging by the energy fluctuations, the girl in front of the commander is an awakened great demon. Arthur looks at the girl and says that he didn't expect that in just a couple of hours, she would turn from a human into a monster. She just smiles, asking the man if he regrets it. Releasing a huge amount of his power, the man admits that his only regret is that he did not kill her when she was still in a wheelchair. The commander directs all his force towards the enemy in order to wound it. He does this successfully, and incinerates almost the entire head of the demon. Arthur uses his abilities to float in the sky, watching the monster's reaction to this. And while everyone is rejoicing in victory, he realizes that the attack had no effect. The girl makes some kind of indignant sound and easily regenerates her head. The monster recovers in a matter of minutes and turns its gaze towards Jiang. And if the man is hardly surprised, the cameraman filming this battle is clearly in severe shock. This time, Arthur concentrates all his strength in his fist and decides that this blow should be made right now. 4 streams of power simultaneously pierce the monster's body in several dreams, and yet the demon easily recovers. The girl asks if this is the light that dispels the darkness that the man spoke of in the past. The commander jumps back sharply from the enemy several meters. He sensed a very strong danger that threatens him. Suddenly, a voice is heard from behind, asking if this is all the speed the man is capable of. She appears behind a frightened Arthur, noting that wanting to dispel the darkness with so much power is simply ridiculous. Jiang soars upward, hoping to break away from an opponent who is clearly stronger than him. The operator notes out loud that the girl is not moving at high speed. She is simply changing her location with the help of plants. Chung slams his hand on the table, telling the commander that they need to leave as quickly as possible. The man understands that the enemy cannot be killed, no matter how hard they try. So he suggests to his partner that they use weapons of mass destruction to destroy the entire contaminated area. Arthur asks only one question. Does his partner still think he can escape from there? The man takes off his treasured cloak and looks for the last time at the medal Musk presented to him. The great demon notes that it is quite wise to stop struggling, knowing that your efforts are useless. She also looks at her opponent and says that his current state can be compared to a cornered animal. Arthur releases all his strength and proclaims that this is his way to die with dignity. A huge pillar of red-crimson power emanates from the commander. The operator suggests that the man is planning to use a technique called forcing the elements, which could lead to death. But Chung understands that his partner wants to completely release the vital forces, the burning of which increases the level. Qianlu begins to talk out loud about how, with the release of such power, the 7th level can be comparable to the 8th. But because of this, the body will experience severe overload. After such a dose, professionals turn into ordinary people, and some are even paralyzed. The man once again directs all his energy into Qianlu, only this time there is much more power in it. But the girl is confident in her powers. She cannot be killed as long as she moves her mind into different plants. But she doesn't have time to use it. Commander Jiang cuts off half of the enemy's body before it moves. And while everyone is rejoicing over the victory over the enemy, Chung reports that the monster is still alive, and also that it is not even a great demon. This is the giant Antaeus, who cannot be defeated as long as he stands on the ground and draws strength from there. The sources of its energy are also all the tens of thousands of mutated ones, who must also be destroyed for victory. Suddenly, energy levels begin to increase at an incredible rate. Chung reports that the girl has now become a natural disaster. Qianlu condescendingly notes that it is simply incredible that human professionals are able to reach such a level by burning themselves out. The girl begins to reason why Arthur did not dispel the darkness that he spoke of so confidently. Why he allowed innocent people to die. And also, why he allowed her to die. The creature's emotions spiral out of control, and all the flower demons rise up and begin to head towards their leader. In another part of the city, they are trying to save civilians. The military is holding a protective dome that allows them to hide from the enemy. The demons have been trying to break through the dome for a long time, professionals. That a little more and they will not hold out. But the monsters suddenly retreat to the other side, freeing the sphere. The soldiers are glad that they have succeeded, and can finally take a rest. The happiness doesn't last long. One of them notices that this is not the end. Numerous roots and stems form a huge cocoon, in the center of which is Qianlu. After a short time, the cocoon opens, and a girl emerges from it. Only she has increased in size hundreds of times. Commander Jiang stands at her ear, ready to attack again at any moment. He concentrates all his power into his hand again. But this time it is a different color. Bright scarlet. In the end, Arthur states that in this world, everyone has become accustomed to death. The man looks very battered. His entire body is covered in red spots caused by burst blood vessels. Jiang rushes forward and finishes his words by saying that there is nothing wrong with being alive either. Qianlu half-heartedly raises his hand to block the attack, but her eyes widen in surprise when she sees that the energy simply burns her hand in the very center and does not stop. The news is still actively showing the broadcast. The presenter joyfully announces that humanity still has a chance to win. Even those who are far from the scene of events are sincerely happy about this. One man even decides to become a professional who will command lightning. But hopes once again prove false. The demon again easily regenerates the lost limb. She wraps the roots that grew from her hand around Adam, intending to kill him. Qianlu slowly clenches her huge palm into a fist, and finally suggests that Jiang go to hell, since there is nothing interesting in being alive. The girl squeezes her huge hand to the end, crushing the commander to death, leaving only splashes of blood and a multitude of flying petals from the man. Shaking the blood off her hand, she simply compares this fight to a fight between a bug and a tiger. Everyone is shocked. The mother covers her daughter's eyes so that she does not see the horror that is now being shown all over television. Another girl desperately takes the guy by the hand and asks if this place has come to an end. The guy himself is lost and doesn't know, but hopes that help is already on the way. More and more people are crowding around their news screens, desperate to realize that Musk has been out of office for a month and won't be coming to help them. At this time, in the prison where the main character is being held, announcements about a natural disaster are heard, and all personnel are asked to go to evacuation points. Xiaoqiu opens his eyes, curious about what is happening. The chairman is angry. He curses all the professionals who should have been on the front lines, but now do not want to do so because of the fear of death. The employees listen to all his words, afraid to object or contradict the boss. But one of them still decides to say that Musk shouldn't have been treated so cruelly in the first place. The chairman's gaze changes and he suddenly jumps up from his chair. Another man suggests using nuclear weapons. If they use low-power weapons, they can get rid of the elemental-level monster. The rest immediately agree, because it is much better to sacrifice more for less. All faces are turned towards the chairman. They tell him that then the people will thank him for saving the city of Dahe. The man is shocked and is about to say something to his subordinates, but is immediately interrupted. The worker suddenly shouts out that someone has appeared at the scene of the disaster. The chief begins to have hopes and asks if these are the professionals he sent to fight the demon. The speaker listens to the information he hears in his headphones, holding them with his hand. The man's eyes widened in fear, and he declared in fear that the person there looked more like a monster. A crack appeared on the roof of the main building of the Self-Defense Forces Special Prison, with smoke coming from it. This crack was quite large in size and had several branches, which immediately expanded across the entire area. The guards inside the special prison of the Self-Defense Forces were frightened, and one of the people serving fell to the floor and opened his mouth in horror at what he saw. A second guard came running to the terrifying sounds, and asked his comrade about what was happening and the prisoner's location. The frightened man rose to his feet, and pointing to the roof, told his colleague that the prisoner had escaped through that gap. At this time, The streets were still in a state of terror as the plants continued to spread throughout the prison grounds. Left in charge, one of the soldiers informed his comrades that Commander Jiang had died. However, others were not as shocked by the news of the commander-in-chief's death as by the fact that the plant was once again beginning its attack on the prison building and the surrounding area. The fighters threw down their weapons and, as one, rushed to quickly escape from the dangerous place, forgetting about their purpose. The chief rescuer raised his weapon and shouted to those running to stop immediately and continue their duty. Having lost hope that his soldiers would conscientiously fulfill their duties, the new commander rushed towards the plant and planned to deal with it single-handedly. After the man struck the plant's buds and stems with an energy spear, it began to emit a strange green gas. At that very moment, the fetters of the dangerous rose intertwined and pulled the main fighter into the center. One of the rescuers noticed that the captain was in danger and decided to save him in order to fight with him for everyone's safety. The boy, overcoming his fear, went to the place where the captain once stood and realized that there was nothing left to save. Still, the young fighter managed to crawl to the center of the plant, where the green stems were actively writhing. Some time later, the dangerous rose, whose roots had been cut by the captain, sprayed a fairly large amount of green liquid and gas near the young fighter. The soldier managed to find the body of his commander, and he tried with all his might to bring him back to his senses, although the plant appeared to be dead. Looking around, the soldier realized that they were saved, but the brave captain could not come to his senses for a long time. Above the roofs of multi-story buildings appeared that girl, around whom was green energy, and rose roots were coming out of her legs. A helicopter carrying a reporter also flew over the rooftops of the buildings, despite the danger, wanting to capture everything that was happening on the ground. The pilot told the man that he needed to climb higher because his superiors had ordered him to leave the area. But the man with the camera asked him to wait a while until he had captured the necessary footage. Zooming in on his camera, the reporter saw that help had arrived to help the rescuers, and he was overjoyed. On the building's large screen, where the recordings were being broadcast, people watched as reinforcements moved toward the scene and began to scold them for their slowness and the death of their commander. The center of the plant was shown close up, where it was clear that a brave man was crushing the shackles of the rose as quickly and efficiently as possible. When someone present whispered that this was their hero, the image that appeared on the screen was not that of a human, but of a real monster who had pink energy. The monster that reincarnated as a great demon had the goal of destroying the new natural disaster, and as a reward, he would be given the core of the great demon. The aura of the great demon is different from that of Xiaoqiu, as the original great demon symbolized decay and destruction. However, this time it represents the life of primeval forests, tropical plants, vines, and tall trees that grow without any restrictions and instantly develop and turn into their own biome. Whether it was a mountain or a sea, a desert or a city, everything on this planet was transformed into a single organism and plunged into a state of eternal peace. It didn't matter to the protagonist what it actually was, as he wanted to obtain the heart of the great demon to gain the power to fight those creatures from the void in the future. For his own purposes, Xiaoqiu needs to kill the main girl who started this dangerous phenomenon. The girl put her hands in front of her and called on everyone to join her, and thereby discover a world without sadness, sorrow, and injustice. Sister Yang Qianqian began to reflect on how she no longer belonged to herself, but her thoughts were soon interrupted by the fact that her southern buds had ceased to exist. Looking around, the dangerous girl couldn't understand what kind of daredevil had managed to cut down her plants. The rescue monster that appeared swung its weapon from side to side, each time destroying more and more stems. The protagonist looked at his old acquaintance and realized that he would never have thought that she would be such a creature. Despite all the strength and power of the rose stems, Mask managed to maneuver between them and easily find a way out of the most difficult situation. At one point, Musk climbed onto the green arm of his girlfriend's sister, and she screamed in horror at him to get out of there quickly. The girl wanted to react to the appearance of the uninvited rescuer, but Mask was not harmed in any way by her powerful green energy. All the rose plants turned into humanoid forms when they saw that their leader was in grave danger. The main character was not at all embarrassed by the activity of the buds, because he was completely confident in himself and his actions. The reporter was surprised by the rescuer's speed, because with such speed, even a natural disaster could do nothing to counter his attacks. Even just watching the battle unfolding raised people's adrenaline levels and accelerated their heartbeats. One of the fighters was somewhat perplexed by how the monsters could fight so professionally. The monster skillfully dodges every explosion and ash literally by millimeters, thereby saving time and physical endurance. The man believed that the reason why humans were able to fight monsters was because of the difference in wisdom and ability. But this monster's ingenuity was beyond the capabilities of even level 9 professionals. In fact, the fighter was scared by this situation because he did not know who was in front of them, a monster or a man with rather strange armor. The confident smile had already disappeared from the girl's face, as Xiao Chu was actively swinging his weapon at her body, unaffected by her defenses and attacks. In appearance, Mask was truly monstrous, because his entire body resembled a dragon, which was completely covered in pink energy. Absolutely confident in his abilities, the protagonist flapped his dragon wings and found himself in front of the face of Sister Qian Qian, who was frightened at that moment. The onlookers didn't understand the point of hiding and dodging just centimeters away from the explosions when the monster could simply take off. That same fighter was truly shocked by the actions of the protagonist, because he had thoughtfully approached the head of this flower girl, and then suddenly flew up. A man would never have done something like this without the colossal self-confidence that Musk possessed. Having calculated all his actions step by step, the cruel monster managed to swing his only weapon and smash the Flower Queen's head. The reporter captured the incident on camera, and happily commented that this madman was able to defeat this terrible woman. The flower monsters rushed to attack Mask one after another, but they were not as strong as the monster. When the end came for the Flower Queen, all her subordinates suddenly stopped and froze. A male reporter informed viewers that the humanoid flowers had stopped moving throughout the city and were no longer moving, and the monster had managed to maintain its victory over them. All the green plants that covered the huge city had only one question. What kind of dangerous creature was it that killed their main woman? In fact, the girl survived, but instead of the upper half of her head, small stems of roses appeared. The heroine looked at the monster, who had already stopped his active actions, and asked who he really was and why he had a bloody blade in his hand. The flower lady recognized her opponent as a monster and informed him that they were on equal terms. The girl's body quickly regenerated, and she concluded that she and the monster had no need to fight, as they had one common cause. The girl handed Xiao Qiu one rope and made it clear to him that together they could change this rotten world for the better. Along with the stem, the Flower Queen gave the monster the core of the Great Demon, which is capable of allowing the owner to enjoy the overwhelming energy of the Great Demon. The girl did not want to simply give the core to the winner, because she wanted him to join her and escape from this lifeless and dirty world. The Flower Queen asked the monster to run to the gap between the mountains and the valley, reach the river, and appear before the majestic sea. The tiny rosebuds obediently stood in place and listened to the words of their leader, who said that they and the monster that had appeared needed to work together to destroy the darkness in this world. Tens of thousands of humanoids listened to their queen and shouted that they would destroy the world along with her. The reporter's expression changed after the cry of the small flowers and told the viewers that his heart almost jumped out from such things, because this natural disaster cannot be killed. What bothered the man with the camera most was that these two monsters seemed to have known each other for a long time. The main character listened to the girl, but he was not interested in all of this, since even before his reincarnation he was fed up with this, and now he wants to destroy all the monsters. The flower mistress felt offended that Musk had ignored her offer, but it seemed to him that with these offers she simply wanted to stop him and calm him down. A new idea appeared in the girl's eyes. She wanted to know if this monster could kill her. Otherwise, she would destroy this rotten world. The Flower Queen released her stems and grabbed hold of the flying protagonist, completely wrapping his body. Musk created several additional pairs of legs, and with one swing cut through the plant bonds surrounding him. The girl opened her mouth and wanted to suck in the dangerous monster with a stream of air, and the main character was just at her mouth. With particular apprehension, the flower mistress closed her mouth and hoped that the difficult battle was over. But at some point, horror appeared on the girl's face. She felt that the monster was behind her and preparing a serious attack. Xiao Qiu had destroyed at least tens of thousands of giant monsters in his life, but he was unable to kill this girl because he was unable to find her real body right away. After an unsuccessful attack on the girl's head, the protagonist realized that her real body was hidden much lower, and perhaps in the back area. The next attack resulted in a green flash appearing in the area of the girl's back, indicating that the hero had hit the target. However, Mask had to cut through many intertwined stems before reaching the heroine's real body. After a short struggle, the protagonist saw how a white-blue color began to shine in the interweaving of some of them, denoting the soul of the mistress of flowers. Part of the monster's mask was destroyed in this fight, but this no longer bothered him, as he managed to complete the task set before him. Inside several tens of thousands of plant stems was the tiny body of a real girl. Not expecting a trick, the real girl received a direct blow to the chest, but in response she only reported that she did not expect another bug to appear. The protagonist did not have much time at his disposal, as his strength and endurance were running low. All of the hero's actions noticeably slowed down, and he understood that he had to take the very last step. Otherwise, he himself could become a victim of this fight. A rather attractive girl looked into the monster's eyes and told him that she liked him much more than Musk himself. The hero thought that his hit on the girl was not accurate, but she immediately reassured him, saying that she only wanted to spend her remaining energy. The Flower Queen leaned over the city, and her actions caused fear and confusion among the onlooking inhabitants. The sweaty reporter lowered his face and concluded that they had lost this battle, and now the city was doomed to die. But the city was flooded with rain, and a bright flash appeared in the sky, reminiscent of a flying meteorite. The reporter continued to film bravely, yet deep down he was afraid that it was a real nuclear bomb. The man concluded that government officials had decided to use dangerous weapons to rid the city of the natural disaster and restore people's lives to their former selves. The flower mistress informed her killer that these people were so ruthless that they were ready to kill their savior, and themselves as well, for the sake of the future of the entire planet. However, before her death, the heroine promised to make everyone realize that the people in the government are bad because they mocked Musk. The inner body of the Flower Queen lit up, and she waved her hands and began to await her hour of death. On her hand, numerous huge trees appeared, creating a typical deciduous forest. The meteorite was getting closer and closer to the Earth's surface, and this was increasingly raising panic and fear among ordinary spectators. When the celestial rocket fell to the ground, a powerful explosion was created that turned the Flower Queen's subordinates into statues. The main character also had a hard time, as the shockwaves rocked Mask from side to side, preventing him from finding his balance. Having taken a stable position on the ground, Xiaoqiu saw that glass had been blown out of the windows of the buildings and a tangle of dead stems had formed on the ground. All citizens watching the events through the screen expected a quick end to this dangerous cataclysm. In the office where the screens were, one of the men told the director that the creature that caused the incredible energy fluctuations had disappeared, but the natural disaster had been successfully ended. People's mouths dropped open in amazement, and they waited for the final announcement of the end of this natural disaster. But they couldn't believe that the nuclear warhead had done a better job than that monster. One of the men present pointed to the screen and asked everyone to watch as the tree of the main dangerous woman split into pieces, and rose blossoms flew all over the city. One of the men advised his child not to touch them, as she could mutate into something similar, which would later be just as mercilessly killed. When the petals touched the girl's palms, her father realized that they did not pose any danger and did not threaten her life. The main character sat by a large stone and held in his arms the very same sister, Chang, with whom this global problem began. It was clear that the girl was unconscious, as she had lost all her strength and was exhausted. When the Flower Queen came to her senses, she was pleasantly surprised by the flying rose flowers, because she never knew that spring was so beautiful. When she tried to touch a rose petal that was flying through the air, the girl disintegrated into tiny green atoms. For the monster, the main mission of reincarnating a great demon was completed, after which he received a special reward in the form of a great demon core. Musk looked around after the sweet lady's disappearance and found the remains of her energy heart in his hand. The protagonist realized that the young lady's heart was the heart of a great demon, which was given to him as a reward. Without thinking twice, Musk placed his hand on his chest and absorbed this energetic heart. An energy circle appeared in the place where the main character had just been sitting, and Musk himself disappeared into another world. When the reporter showed on television that the city was cleared of vegetation, all observers felt an incredible sense of relief and joy. While the crowds of people shouted praises to the savior, the humanoid flowers turned back into people. Many who observed this phenomenon were so shocked that they could not say anything, and simply continued to stand in a stupor. However, there were also those among the people who realized that the bomb had killed both the plant and real people. In the large meeting hall of the Federation's leaders, the question arose about the correctness of the use of weapons in a situation that claimed the lives of several dozen people. One of the chairmen said that getting rid of the root of the problem is not so easy, since there is a public debate about the use of nuclear bombs by the state. The man believed that the death of several thousand people was not enough to remove President Hea Olo from his top post. The secretary reminded everyone that they had consented to the use of nuclear weapons, but Musk, in addition to them, must also be held accountable for it. No one present understood how this situation affected Musk, since no one had seen him for a long time, and no one knew where he was at the moment. The secretary said that it was precisely because Musk was not present that he was to blame, because if he had been there, the government would not have had to pay such a price, and accidental casualties could have been avoided. The gentleman added that Musk is entirely to blame for the natural disaster in the city of Dahe, simply because he doesn't care about the deaths of ordinary citizens. After the speech, almost everyone present was convinced that what happened was directly related to Musk. When the chairman left, Mr. President continued to worry about everything. But the secretary promised to monitor the situation down to the very last detail. The president wanted to have a pawn as powerful as Musk, or at least 1/10 of his strength, in their hands, and then all external threats would be fairly simple obstacles. When the president inquired about the secret plan, his subordinates explained that many of the specimens were unable to take human form, but once they did, their bodies would be destroyed, so there was not yet enough data for a successful experiment. The chief secretary was confident that the fusion of a monster and a human was entirely possible, and that it would be a future sensation in the scientific sphere of their state. Both the president and the secretary wanted to be the one who would elevate the human species to unprecedented heights and be seen by the people as far better than Musk. When the experiment allows every person to gain such power, then everyone on Earth will gain incredible strength, and the creators themselves will become gods. The map does not show territories of up to 1,000,000 square kilometers where the fight against monsters is being waged. In the earliest years of humanity, this territory consisted of Africa, South America, and Antarctica. But due to the movement of tectonic plates, this area has undergone changes. Before Musk led the army, there was no trace of man on the front lines, only monsters that emerged from the hidden areas. All these creatures not only lived in their own areas, they constantly attacked human settlements, which is why countless souls were sent to the next world. It was only when Musk appeared that humanity was able to re-enter these lands, as he ruthlessly conquered and reshaped the demon territories until they became the front lines between humans and monsters. From the smallest hopes of survival to the unstoppable progress, all this was made possible by one godlike man. When the huge ball appeared in front of the soldiers, they did not know how to properly report all the incidents to Captain Zhang, and shifted this responsibility to each other. When the young girl was about to leave the port, all the soldiers stood at attention and silently waited for her appearance. Her last opponent was a level 7 demon, but she managed to clear the area in just half an hour even though she is on the lower level, which is why she is called a genius. Captain Zhang Ling had quite charming features. Her eyes resembled sea sand, her hair was dyed gray. As she stepped onto the ground, the young girl noticed the frightened expression on one of the soldiers' faces and asked him about it. The desperate man duly contacted Captain Zhang and informed her that a disaster-level monster had appeared in their city. The girl was confident that her subordinates had managed to neutralize the monster that had appeared, and began calmly wiping her valiant weapon. The same fighter burst into tears and told Captain Zhang that her father, Commander Zhang, had sacrificed himself and been killed. The girl sighed heavily, turned towards the forest and ordered her subordinates to head to the next secret area. All the soldiers had beads of sweat running down their faces, and they did not understand what their leader's reaction was, because she did not show a single emotion. The men looked at the captain standing alone, and were sure that everything was fine with her, because she had been controlling lightning all her life and had a cold heart. One of the fighters composed a poem about the loss of Commander Jiang, but a female fighter immediately heard about it, and they quickly apologized to her. The rate at which secret areas are formed on the front lines is the fastest, and it is only thanks to the work of Captain Zhang's team that they are able to control such a large number of secret areas. The stronger the Zhang team is, the more secret areas they must clear and neutralize all the monsters that exist there. When the female fighter went into the portal, one of her subordinates asked to go with her, as they hadn't done this for a long time and would soon become a support group. The girl responded to this request with rudeness and took the offer as a manifestation of a low opinion of her and her actions. Frightened, the young man raised his hands and apologized to his commander, as he had not meant to offend her with his statements. As a result of the whole situation, Captain Zhang went into the portal. The young fighter remained in the same place and watched her departure. When the female fighter disappeared from the forest, all the fighters breathed a sigh of relief, and one of them commented that the captain's aura was comparable to that of a monster. The man who informed the commander of the death of the commander, after reflecting on the words of his comrades, said that their captain was more like an emotionless monster who did not know pain. Meanwhile, the captain went alone to the next secret area, where dead monsters awaited her, which someone had already dealt with before her. Looking at the corpses of the horrible creatures, the girl realized that they had all been killed with the same weapon, meaning the attacker had worked alone. Captain Zhang couldn't believe that this dangerous man also came to the secret area alone, without any support behind him. Hearing the roar of a monster from the darkness, the heroine turned around and saw an armed, muscular creature running. As it turned out, besides the captain, Mask also fought bravely in this secret area, and those corpses at the entrance were his work. The girl watched from the sidelines as what was happening was shocked by the fact that the fighters' low level and high combat skills were quite comparable in one body. When the three attacking monsters struck the main character, the girl concluded that he had quite a lot of endurance, because if he were an ordinary person, he would have died on the spot long ago. Captain Zhang decided to take matters into her own hands, charged her sword with energy, and rushed towards the armed monsters. With her first blow, the girl wounded one of the terrible whalemen in the chest, causing him to fall to the ground. The second whale decided to save its companion and emitted powerful streams of energy towards the girl, but they did not harm her in any way. With a calculated maneuver, Captain Zhang swung her weapon and instantly severed the head of one of the monsters. The young girl managed to cope with 3 huge whalemen alone, and she did not need the help of the main character. Musk himself stood a few meters from the incident and was shocked to see that such a fragile girl was capable of such strong actions. Noticing Xiaoqiu, Captain Zhang approached him and asked him his name, which team he was from, and why he was fighting those monsters alone in this secret area. When the protagonist took a few steps towards his interlocutor, he swayed back and fainted. Seeing Musk's shame, the girl believed that he was worthy of her respect and would be just another burden to her. Having waited for the right moment, when one of the fighters fainted, the whalemen emerged from the river and wanted to begin their active actions. The girl was quite tired of all these battles with monsters, but remembering her late father, Commander Jiang, she decided that she needed to act boldly and confidently. Grabbing her weapon, the captain created beams and streams of purple energy around it. Those 4 soldiers continued to wait for the captain to return, and they had no idea what condition she was currently in, or whether she was even alive. One of the soldiers looked at his watch and informed the others that the captain should have already left the secret area, since clearing it didn't require any high-level abilities. Suddenly, the portal lit up with a special color, and everyone present saw Captain Zhang appear, with an unconscious, thin-built guy on her shoulders. The soldiers surrounded their leader and asked her who the guy was that she was holding in her arms, and whether he was a monster. There are numerous military camps scattered across the front line, and the number of people in each of them does not exceed several thousand, and a quarter of the population are professionals in their field, while the rest have work related to the war. Although it is said that professionals have fully integrated into all spheres of society, there are still not enough people who specialize in treatment to perform treatment, so ordinary doctors perform their duties. It was in such a medical institution that the main character found himself after suddenly fainting in a secret area. The doctor informed the captain that the man's organs were damaged, and not every professional would survive with such injuries. The young woman heard from the doctor that the fighter's body's regeneration had allowed him to avoid irreversible consequences in a short period of time, and that the doctor had never encountered such people. The soldier's body emitted radiation, but the doctor did not attach any importance to it, since the amount was significantly small. The doctor approached the girl and offered to hire high-level healers for the guy, but this was not necessary, since his high regeneration would allow him to be discharged very soon. The girl thought about the medic's words, when suddenly she heard a male voice from the side, which ordered the doctor not to keep the soldier within the hospital walls unless necessary. This unknown person turned out to be an elderly man, the commander-in-chief of the 3rd military camp, whose name was La Genier. The captain jumped up from his seat and greeted his teacher, and the doctor opened his mouth in surprise at the arrival of the commander himself. When the protagonist was transferred to the infirmary, the commander informed the captain that the aftermath of the natural disaster incident had finally ended on a good note. When the disaster was officially over, portraits of heroes appeared on screens across the city, including Commander Jiang. The teacher told the young girl that her father had died with honor, and that she should be proud of his actions. The captain lowered her head and agreed with the commander, but it was clear that she felt a special longing for the time spent with her father. The Star City media outlet wanted to interview the girl to make a report about the children of the deceased, but the commander refused. The teacher also said that Father Jiang had made the right choice, and if he had been with him, he would have done the same. The man believed that the young girl should not blame herself for her father's death, since her only fault was that she was fighting with herself. After these words, the commander stood up and walked towards the doors. Finally, the man asked the captain if this guy could give her a couple of tips on how to fight. As the commander sat next to the sick Xiaoqiu, he noticed his powerful sword, which only a special person could wield. Despite her vast combat experience, Captain Zhang did not understand the peculiarities of this sword, and asked her teacher to explain his words to her. The girl also asked her mentor if he knew who this guy really was, but he laughed and left the medical facility. The girl is faced with a huge mystery about the main character, and she can't wait for him to wake up and tell her many interesting facts about himself. After some time, the young man came to his senses and opened his eyes, and then was horrified. The main character looked around and cast an angry glance at the girl unknown to him. Captain Zhang sensed something was wrong and grabbed the hero's sword, but the fighter himself disappeared from sight at that moment. The girl did not understand what strange things were happening to this man, and drops of cold sweat rolled down her body. However, it was all the girl's imagination, and for the first time she was afraid of something like this, since the main character was still lying in the hospital bed. Musk got out of bed and asked his new acquaintance what number this military camp was, but she was perplexed by his abrupt question. The young man realized that it was the beauty who pulled him out of the secret area where he lost consciousness. The young people introduced themselves to each other. The fighter introduced himself by his real name, and after that, a deathly silence fell between the couple. The silence was broken by a voice coming from the television, accusing Musk of being irresponsible to the people. The newscaster said that if such an incident were to occur, Musk should be the first to deal with it, and then he would be able to meet the expectations of the entire nation. Musk remained silent in response to criticism from the TV program, and the girl said that she was fed up with the government, since they were shifting their blame onto the defenseless Musk. The girl giggled and said that the government was using Musk for its own purposes, since they could push all the existing problems onto him, and then pin all the responsibility on him. Captain Zhang approached the protagonist and allowed him to remain within these walls until his wounds healed, and if he did not pose a threat to the entire camp. If Xiao became a problem for the camp, Captain Zhang would still be able to break all his bones one by one, despite his good abilities. The protagonist was surprised by the self-confident girl's words, and he said that she would not be able to break all his bones, since he was too tough for her. The captain nodded and told the protagonist that she looked forward to the day when she could fight him. However, the girl could no longer waste time on the sick guy, because she needed to clear out another secret area. Captain Zhang's subordinates arrived at the door of the chamber, inquiring about the young man and his origins. None of those present, including the young lady, understood why the commander wanted to personally treat this guy. The captain told her comrades that she only knew the young man's name. When the female fighter left the room, her subordinates began to discuss Xiao Qiu, as this name seemed extremely familiar to them. Watching the captain leave, one of the men concluded that the young girl's pent-up rage would soon burst out. The two men spoke and heard a strange sound, and the fighters turned around to see Xiao Qiu appear. Captain Zhang's subordinates approached the protagonist and asked about his well-being and his future plans for travel. Qiu intended to go into the secret area, but the young people tried to stop him, as his condition was not suitable for this. The hero's heart merges with the heart of the great demon, and therefore Qiu's body craves life energy. As long as Mask destroys monsters, he can absorb their life energy and use it to heal his wounds. One of the fighters approached the main character and asked if he had his own team, since without one, entering the secret areas was prohibited. The other man was not against Xiao Qiu going to the secret area, as his help there could benefit the Zhang team. After Musk left, the same commander-in-chief appeared in the hospital premises, and this alarmed the soldiers. One of those present told the officer that Xiao's solitary trek into the secret area was against all the rules, but he quickly put the guy in his place. As commander-in-chief, the man explained to his subordinates that it was he who decided to send Xiao Qiu, and that there should be no contradictions with this decision. 4 strong guys stood up at attention, and in trembling voices informed the chief that they had no objections to his order. After clarifying the entire situation, the commander ordered the fighters to split into 2 groups and go to help Zhang Ling and this young man. Captain Jiang found herself in a secret location. Suddenly she noticed 2 of her subordinates running after her, and she didn't understand why there were only 2 of them. The soldiers told the captain about the situation with the commander-in-chief and Xiao Qiu, and they began to suspect that this guy was directly connected to the general. The young girl didn't understand why Xiao wanted to go out and clear the area immediately after waking up. 2 soldiers expressed their pity for their comrades who followed the crazy guy, but the captain said that Xiao probably adhered to her strict rules and principles. Meanwhile, the guys who followed Xiao Qiu tried to find out from him how he was connected with the commander-in-chief, since he went against the rules for the sake of this campaign. The main character did not like this interrogation, and he answered his interlocutors through clenched teeth that he had no connection with the gentleman. Having calmed down, the fighter told Xiao Qiu that their commander-in-chief was a legendary man, because his eyesight allowed him to see even in pitch darkness. According to the soldiers, the commander has already reached the 9th rank, and can now attend all important meetings where his vote will be taken into account. Stopping halfway, the man said that their commander-in-chief had fought face-to-face with Musk himself, and that demanded the highest respect. The protagonist listened to the soldier's words and remembered the battle that had happened to him a long time ago. When Musk had no reputation yet, he led 3,000 people and went to the front lines to fight monsters. Countless monsters continually attacked the struggling people from the sky, the ground, and even the water. However, the army of people, despite all the pessimistic views, proved with their own blood that humanity is capable of existing on this earth. The surviving soldiers of the army grew up to become powerful professionals, after which they gathered even more people, forming the front line to fight the monsters. Xiao Qiu and his companions approached the portal to go to the next secret area. The fighters decided to follow Chu in order to cover his back in case of danger. Since their weapons had not spilled anyone's blood for a long time, there was no need for outside help at all, as Xiao Qiu could handle it just fine on her own. The main character loves such secret areas that are simply teeming with monsters, because with them, Chu loses control of himself and simply kills mercilessly. Finding himself alone in the face of danger, Musk was transformed, and once again became the terrible monster who had previously saved the city from the incident. This secret area was filled with monstrous monsters that looked like wolves with long horns. The main character was not afraid to face danger, because he had the best weapon in his hand. Approaching the predators, Xiao Qiu whispered that he only had 3 minutes at his disposal. As it turns out, the hero's body has not yet fully recovered from the injuries inflicted by the nuclear bomb, so he can only maintain his monster form for 3 minutes. Those 3 minutes were more than enough, so Musk decided to act immediately. The dangerous monsters took off and ran towards the hero, but they were already met by streams of Chu's purple energy. Sharp horns flew from the monsters' heads in all directions, and the heads themselves, separated from the body, fell to the ground. Thanks to his quick and skillful movements, Mask was able to easily deal with all the monsters that attacked him and lay their corpses on the ground. The bodies of the predators were covered with energy pollen, and instead of wolves, they turned out to be ordinary dogs. Later, the monsters' bodies disappeared, and the energy pollen headed towards the main character. The great demon's heart absorbs the life energy of these monsters to heal previously sustained wounds. After such healing, the time during which the hero can maintain the monster form also increases. The companions were still standing at the portal and wanted to enter it to help the protagonist, but they were not sure that he was alive. The second man said that this guy couldn't face anyone strong, and he was probably sitting at the portal right now, shaking with fear. When the confident Xiao Qiu appeared from the portal, the soldiers closed their mouths and regretted all the words they had just said. The fighters were stunned by the speed of the boy's return, as they couldn't figure out how he had managed to escape from the secret area before the time limit had expired. It suddenly dawned on one of the men that this young man had managed to fight the main boss of the secret area, and he confirmed his words. Musk told those present that there was most likely no boss there, since all the attacking monsters were very weak. The young man handed the man some sharp horns and asked him to make some arrows out of them. Seeing what fell out of the monster, the men couldn't believe that the main character dealt with the monster faster than Captain Jiang, because her speed record is half an hour. The fighters concluded that they were facing someone who was twice as strong as the captain. Musk didn't listen to the fighters' empty words, and suggested that they move on to the next area. The main character dealt with all the areas just as quickly, and the soldiers didn't even have time to blink an eye. When the captain and her team appeared in secret areas, they noticed that the area had already been cleared by some previous hero. In each area, Zhang's team came across traces of the same group, which had overtaken the girl and killed all the monsters. One of Jiang's subordinates said that they left the camp together with Xiao Qiu, and therefore it couldn't be him, since he couldn't have cleared out the secret area so quickly. The man said that there was only one explanation left, that it was a very strong group that came from another military camp. The young girl was upset about the failure, but she reassured her subordinates by telling them that someone wanted to help them, and that this was quite good. Turning away from the fighters, the captain promised herself to return from the secret area and immediately find out which daredevil had challenged her. After returning from the expedition, each team reports on the results obtained during it and the things they received. For their achievements, teams earn valor points, which they can later exchange for various rewards at the military camp, with the highest end prizes including lessons with the commander-in-chief. Captain Zhang heard that one of the teams managed to clear 17 secret areas in just one day. The military camp administrator couldn't believe that 3 young men had managed to clear so many areas, but the man proved it to him. The anxious administrator asked the fighter to provide evidence that it was they who cleared these areas, and not someone else. The soldiers opened the bag and poured out onto the table the bones, fangs, and valuables left by the dangerous creatures. Seeing all these objects, the administrator fell into horror, and drops of cold sweat began to run down his face. The man told the soldiers that he was shocked by what had happened, as even Captain Lin could not clear out such a large number in just one day. The bald man hugged Xiao Qiu and informed the administrator that the person standing before him was a highly skilled professional, appointed by the commander-in-chief himself. After thinking about what had happened, The administrator handed the fighters the task and informed them that there was a 6th rank area in which 2 teams had already died. The man added that such inhuman abilities should help Xiao cope with this location in a couple of minutes, and he accepted this offer. Admiring Qiu's success, the bald man informed everyone that this hero's strength was much greater than Captain Zhang's. The administrator trembled, his expression changed, and informed the desperate fighter that Captain Zhang was standing behind him. The young girl listened to all the words of her subordinates about Xiao Qiu's success and was extremely dissatisfied. Upon seeing Captain Zhang, the bald man trembled with terror and asked her not to take his words to heart. The protagonist grabbed the piece of paper and wanted to report to the captain about his cleanup results. The girl crossed her arms over her chest in an offended manner and asked the young man if he had really cleaned them himself, and he agreed. The captain said that Qiu was so confident even when he was bedridden, and now everything became clear. Musk realized that Captain Zhang was deeply offended by him, and all he could do was wait until the offense went away on its own. The girl said that she had overheard that there was a difficult 6th rank area, and she decided to take on this task as well. Desperate for her powers, the captain challenged Xiao to see which of them would be the first to kill the boss of this secret area. The girl took her subordinates and headed towards the exit of the building, leaving Qiu and his companions behind. The bald man thanked Xiao for sparking the captain's competitive spirit. After looking at the sheet with the 6th rank secret area, the protagonist finally understood why the system wanted to bring him here. The hero also remembered one important thing that happened on the front lines, immediately after the incident with the Great Demon. While the young man was peering at the assignment sheet, one of the soldiers was examining his face and weapon. It finally dawned on the soldier where he had seen this young man before, and he was horrified by the memory. That same soldier came to the 3rd headquarters of the military camp and reported to the commander that Xiao Qiu was the very man who had slaughtered an entire company in the city of Dahe. The commander tried to explain that it could just be a coincidence, since the cities are quite far from each other and the guy simply could not have been here. The young fighter said he had been following Xiao all day, and his hairstyle and body structure were exactly the same as in the photos. This soldier was also confused by the sword, which was identical to the one that the criminal in Dahi City had. In fact, the man also did not understand how this person managed to get from the city, which is 1,000 kilometers away, to the front line. The commander informed his subordinate that tomorrow, while he was being sent to clear the secret area, he would arrive there to investigate this situation. The fighter hoped that he had done the right thing, because this young man could turn out to be a truly dangerous person. Xiao Qiu, Captain Zhang and her team headed to the portal, where the soldiers decided to follow their leader. However, the young girl did not want anyone to be with her, because they simply felt sorry for her after the news that 2 teams had died there at once. The young men thought that their captain was afraid that they would become strong enough to claim her rank. At one point, Captain Zhang turned to her subordinates and asked them to keep up with her, which they were overjoyed to hear. Before entering the portal, the girl warned the men that this battle only concerned her and Xiao, so she forbade them from interfering. Everyone went into the portal except the fighter, who reported his suspicions to the commander, since he had to wait for his arrival. Without waiting for his boss, the young man stepped into the portal and followed his company, which had already found itself in a secret area. The protagonist extended his arms, creating a special skill on them that told him that the temperature and humidity of the location were normal, and the air was clean. The fighters who had previously been with Xiao believed that such a narrow space would not lead to anything good, since in the event of a serious attack they would have nowhere to retreat. All the soldiers present, who were equipped with bulletproof vests, looked into the distance, expecting an attack from someone terrible. Suddenly, blood-red eyes appeared at the end of the corridor, rapidly approaching the people. The soldiers from Team Zhang couldn't believe that they were in a 6th-tier secret realm, and were about to be attacked by dangerous monsters. When the light came to light, it turned out that these were more than 1,000 huge crocodiles, which had sharp spikes on their backs. Without thinking twice, Captain Zhang grabbed her weapon and created a lightning effect with it, which she launched towards the monsters. Just one strong girl was capable of killing so many monsters without leaving a single trace of them. All the fighters admired the skills of their leader and cheered for her with all their might. Captain Zhang explained to her company that she was able to kill all the monsters because they foolishly lined up in a single line. The man put his hand on Xiao's shoulder and told him that it would be quite difficult to defeat the captain. The main character didn't really understand what exactly they were competing in, the number of monsters killed or the bosses. The soldiers had been walking for more than 10 minutes, but there was still no sign of the new wave of monsters, as if the captain had destroyed them with one blow. The girl paused to reflect on what had happened in the past, when 2 teams had disappeared in this secret area. The captain was puzzled as to why, after the disappearance of 2 teams, they had still not come across any belongings or remains of bodies. Jiang's subordinates calmed the captain and said that those teams died on the first wave because they were not as strong as her. Suddenly, a strange sound was heard from behind, and the captain asked those around her if they had heard anything. The frightened men hoped it wasn't another wave of dangerous monsters, but the bald fighter said the captain thought he heard the strange sound. Suddenly, all 6 fighters were horrified and saw something strange and scary in front of them. A terrible, eerie sound continued to be emitted throughout the entire location, causing energy streams to fly in all directions. A huge lizard emerged from the darkness, its eyes glowing with blood. The young men noticed that the monster had blocked the entire passage, and they regretted ever having entered this secret area. The girl did not understand why her subordinates were so scared, because they should have more courage than she, a fragile girl. The fighter believed that the monster was not really that dangerous, but was just pretending to be using cheap tricks. The girl sharply pointed her weapon and released streams of purple lightning at the monster. Xiao Qiu stood to the side and modestly held his only weapon. The hero swung his sword and abruptly thrust it into the floor, causing small stones to scatter across the area. Following the lightning bolt, Captain Jiang delivered a sharp blow to the monster's head. But unfortunately, it didn't work. Looking back, the young girl noticed actions on the part of the young man. From Chu's strike, the ground shook underfoot and began to split into many pieces. This was the most effective blow of the fight, as the ground beneath the monster began to collapse. Also, thanks to that blow from Captain Jiang, the monster lost its balance and fell to the ground dead. However, the guy felt sorry that he couldn't defeat all the living creatures in monster mode because he wasn't alone here. The soldiers were incredibly grateful to Xiao Qiu for killing this monster. Otherwise, they would have already been digested in its stomach. It turned out that beneath the ground of this monster, there was another similar creature, which the main character had learned about in advance. The female fighter realized that thanks to this guy, her subordinates and she remained alive, because she herself was focused only on the monster in front of her. Musk explained to those around him that he understood from the vibrations of the earth that the monster was not alone in this place. It was still strange to the soldiers that such a weak player managed to hit the weak spot of a monster located underground with one blow. The hero didn't know how to explain to the company what had happened, because his abilities allow him to see and feel much more than others see and feel. Jiang's subordinates admired the performance of both fighters, as each managed to destroy one boss of this secret location with just one blow. The girl interrupted the man and said that these weren't bosses, otherwise the chest with the reward would have already appeared in front of them, and there was no teleport gate either. The soldiers fell silent from what they heard, because they understood that a boss was waiting for them, whose size would be much larger than these slain monsters. The girl climbed onto the dead creature and ordered her subordinates not to lag behind her, as it was quite dangerous to walk here alone. The men lowered their sad faces to the floor and informed the captain that they were causing her quite a lot of trouble. Without looking back, the girl reassured her subordinates, telling them that they were one big team. Everyone present in the secret area followed Xiao Qiu and Captain Jian and saw an iron door in front of them. The commander decided that her soldiers would not enter that door, but would faithfully wait for their return. Qiu and Captain Jiang walked up to the huge metal door and began to open its locks towards each other. After the opening, the couple went into a room full of dusty and dirty clouds. After an uncomfortable journey, Xiao and Ling came out into a clear location, where something terrible awaited them. Hearing light footsteps, the girl concluded that they would not fight a huge monster, but she was seriously mistaken. A huge, muscular crocodile reaching up to the ceiling appeared in front of the fighters. The girl knew that the more humanoids resembled humans, the more dangerous they were. There was a large enough distance between the fighters and the monster, allowing the fighters to think through all their actions in advance. The crocodile did not want to give the people much time to plan their future attack well enough, and began to engage them in battle. Captain Jiang told her companion to be as careful as possible with this creature, but in reality, it was she who needed to follow this advice. As always, Xiao calmly watched the events from the sidelines and concluded that the monster might decide to bite the girl's spear, but would immediately be pierced through by it. But the monster wasn't that stupid, because it grabbed the energy spear with its huge paw. From the enormous force, the girl, along with the spear, fell to the ground and was shocked by what was happening. The captain had her last chance, and she took out a special weapon from her pocket, similar to a pistol. The girl, from a prone position, shot purple bullets into the crocodile's face. As the bullets gained speed in flight, they turned into a powerful stream of energy that dealt a serious attack to the monster. The resulting ceiling caused the head and part of the body to burn and become charred. The crocodile's body fell to the ground, and Captain Jiang lay next to it. The guy approached the girl and took her attack to heart, as the fighter was risking himself and his life quite seriously. The girl explained to her interlocutor that nothing in this life can be achieved without risk, and he agreed with her with a grin. Looking back, The girl saw that on the charred body of the crocodile was the face of her familiar fighter. The protagonist asked if she knew him, and she replied that he was a 6th-rank fighter who had his own team, just like her. Xiaoqiu and Ling understood that this comrade from the first missing team had accidentally turned into this creature. Raising her head, the young lady saw at least 5 more of these monsters moving in her direction. Without thinking twice, the young man and woman figured out their roles and divided the attacking monsters between them. When the crocodiles began their active attack, Chu and Ling immediately launched a counterattack. Once close to the monsters, Captain Zhang swung her sharp energy spear at them. The shockwave and bright flash knocked the crocodiles off their feet and sent them flying backwards. The girl single-handedly managed to cut off the limbs and heads of 3 nearby monsters. Having lost her vigilance, the captain failed to notice that one of the predators was preparing a brutal attack from behind. Having noticed the danger, the female fighter still managed to maneuver and fight off the attacker with a spear. It was this bridge that was brutally killed by her hands, because she released all of its entrails and cut its body in half. The heroine once again realized that the killed monsters were people in the past, but now their powers were significantly greater than before. After finishing the fight, the girl turned and looked at Xiaoqiu, who was also actively trying to deal with the remaining monsters. The main character experienced exactly the same situation as the captain, when a huge monster appeared behind him. However, the young man immediately sensed something was wrong and, turning around, struck the crocodile in the chest. The entire room was filled with the corpses of monsters that had been chopped into many small pieces by the fighters. After the battle, Captain Zhang informed her companion that these monsters were former professionals who had come here to clear out the secret area. The girl said that she still couldn't understand one thing, but her thoughts suddenly stopped. In the secret area, huge muscular creatures appeared again, wanting to deal with the killers of their comrades. Religious pillars appeared in the room, and at that moment the terrible monsters fell to their knees and began to pray to them. Captain Zhang concluded that the crocodiles were trying to call someone for help with their actions. After the monsters prayed, the religious pillars glowed with bright purple energy. The young girl realized that something terrible was awaiting them, something they would have to cope with particular difficulty. A pair of eyes appeared next to the main pillar, and the girl decided to quickly prevent this madness. She rushed towards the kneeling crocodiles and thrust her spear into them with one blow. After the monsters died, the pair of eyes closed and the pillars disappeared from the secret area. After what happened, the girl turned to Chu and asked him who these creatures really wanted to call, but he pretended not to know the answer to this question. In fact, the protagonist knew that it was a demonic god living in the void, and the only thing he looked at was Xiao. The main character and the demonic god can be called old acquaintances who met in the past. When Xiaoqiu and Captain Zhang emerged from the portal, 4 loyal soldiers were waiting for them. The men surrounded their leader, Zhang Ling, and began to question her about the appearance and size of the main boss they had killed with Xiao. The girl did not want to answer the stupid questions of her subordinates and wanted to return to the camp to tell the commander everything. The soldiers looked at each other and did not understand what had actually happened in the secret area. The sound of a cane was heard from the side, and everyone saw the commander to whom the captain was going. This time the commander-in-chief was not alone, but had a horde of armed soldiers standing behind him. One of the frightened fighters from Zhang's team asked his superior why he had come here with a law enforcement team. The commander bowed respectfully and asked the men not to worry, as this did not apply to them. After that, the boss approached Xiaoqiu and whispered that this was directly related to him. The man closed his eyes and asked his interlocutor if it would be better to call him the butcher from the city of Dahe. The captain's team and Lin herself were shocked by the words they heard, except for the fighter who reported to the commander-in-chief. Captain Zhang's soldiers stood up for their new comrade and informed the commander that this man was not capable of such cruel acts. The 4th fighter speaker stepped into the center of the conversation, informing everyone that his observations had long ago proven that this was the very same criminal. The disappointed captain turned to Xiaoqiu and asked him if it was really him. The young man sighed heavily and whispered to his new girlfriend that his name was indeed Xiaoqiu from Dahe City. The informer was overjoyed that he had managed to uncover this serious secret. The protagonist approached the commander-in-chief and asked if they would arrest him. The man said that the person hiding from the court should be immediately detained and taken to the atonement camp. However, this was only required by federal authorities, and his misconduct has nothing to do with the military camp in which he is located. The armed guards looked at the gentleman in bewilderment and did not understand what to do in this situation. The commander turned to the protagonist and said that he had analyzed all of his actions, and that in his place he would have done exactly the same. Coming as close as possible, the gentleman whispered that most likely he would have done even worse. According to the gentleman, this time could be the beginning of a flourishing period, but only if all the fighters become like Xiaoqiu. At this point, the question of Chu's guilt was closed, and the commander asked those present not to raise the topic again until they returned to the military camp. Captain Zhang approached the master and asked him to ask an indiscreet question. The fighters from Zhang Ling's team didn't care about what happened, because they were worried about what the captain and Xiao Qiu had encountered in the secret realm. The female fighter and the protagonist actually looked quite nervous after visiting the secret area, and the soldiers were eager to find out all the details as soon as possible. The girl asked the commander-in-chief if he knew anything about the altar at which the monsters prayed. The commander's face changed, and he whispered that this altar was a demonic god. The girl was horrified, because she had never heard before that all monsters have one god. The master explained to his student that on the front lines, many teams were killing monsters in secret areas, but the creatures had not yet broken through their attacks, since the source of all monsters had not been killed. The man compared this source to the flow of a river, the mouth of which is constantly blocked by people, and as long as this source exists, the war with the monsters will never end. Captain Zhang didn't understand anything at all, so she asked the teacher where the original source of all the problems was. The commander-in-chief explained to her that the source of the secret areas was the demonic god, or in other words, the owner of the altar that the soldiers saw. The monsters of the secret areas, which the heroes spend so much effort clearing, are just grains of sand in the larger system in which all the monsters live. In fact, the number of monster gods who have died at the hands of humans is much greater than it might seem, so the meaning of fighting them is quite great. The commander remained silent, and later told his assistant that there was only one person capable of killing the demon god, and the girl immediately understood who he was talking about. Captain Zhang learned from her teacher that after she saw the altar, the monsters might rebel and break through. The appearance of the altar means that God is gradually awakening from his slumber, and if a breakthrough occurs, his monsters will come pouring in from all sides. The girl was scared, because even in Musk's presence the number of victims was difficult to count, and now in his absence, it is impossible to imagine how many will be killed. Confident of the dire situation, the commander ordered the student to no longer clear the secret areas from that day on, and asked her to deliver his letter to other military camps. As a caring commander, the man asked the girl to rest for a couple of days, while such an opportunity was available before a serious battle. Through all her pride, Captain Zhang whispered that she was not tired of working and that she enjoyed overcoming all the difficulties. The commander didn't even listen to the student's opinion and ordered her to take Xiao Qiu with her while she delivered letters to the camps. After discovering Xiao Qiu's secret, the master decided that he should change his appearance and asked the fighters to prepare a mask for him. Captain Zhang set out on a tour of the camps with her loyal soldiers and Xiao Qiu. The protagonist was given a mask that hid part of his face, which bore scars from battle wounds. The soldiers, who were sitting on the floor playing cards, asked Xiao how he felt about riding on the front line's signature armored train. The man was confident that their train was the most reliable means of transport on Earth, which could go anywhere. Judging by the situation, the bald man was the only one who was so positively disposed towards the main character. One of the soldiers was angry that the commander-in-chief sent them on this trip instead of communicating valuable information via communications. The soldier explained to his comrade that sending a secret document by train was much safer than over the internet or anywhere else. The second fighter continued to stand his ground, as he believed that the monsters would not be able to listen to the radio, which would transmit secret information. Suddenly, a noise was heard outside the window, and throwing down their cards, the soldiers of Zhang's team rushed to the window of the branded train. Outside the train window, at exactly 7 o'clock, a military vehicle with 3 soldiers was moving. Frightened by the strange people, a crew member climbed onto the roof of the train and grabbed a machine gun. The men and the captain concluded that the slowness of clearing the secret areas had caused the monsters to break out. If the secret area is not cleared within a certain time, the monsters will break its seal and break out, which is why 100 years ago a huge number of monsters appeared all over the world. The men in the car drove as fast as they could, looking back all the time. Suddenly, one of the soldiers grabbed a bow and aimed at the moving monsters. These monsters were the same wolves, whose huge eyes were filled with blood. The man, who had already killed around 30 monsters, was angry at the government for pretending not to know anything about the monster breakout. The armed soldier shouted to those sitting in the front of the car that he was out of arrows. After calling for help, the fighter looked back and realized that death awaited him, because a terrible monster was already flying towards him. An energy bullet flew from behind the desperate soldier, and upon contact with the monster, a powerful explosion was created. Looking around, the young man realized that reinforcements had arrived, but he still didn't know who they really were. It became known that the fire came from a machine gun on an armored train. After killing the creatures, the man from the team began shooting at the car's tires. The truck began to skid and the men had difficulty controlling it. Suddenly, a flying monster appeared in the secret area, which resembled a huge hawk with the face of a dragon. The flying creature landed a few meters away from the soldiers' fallen vehicle, meaning that Zhang's team had saved the lives of these soldiers. The next shots from the armored train flew straight into the face of the dangerous creature. When the monster fell to the ground, the soldiers carefully climbed out of the car. The young fighters finally realized that the people from the armored train did not actually want to shoot at them, but were only saving them from the huge predator. Captain Zhang gave the command to break the train, and her entire horde of men rushed to attack the new wave of monsters. One of the fighters shouted to the others not to get too close, as there were quite a lot of monsters. Thanks to Jiang Ling and Xiao Chu, heads and limbs from the dire wolves were scattered all over the place. Each soldier used his own special skills, which helped the main characters fight the creatures. The captain created streams of purple lightning on her spear, thereby cutting the predators into several small pieces. Xiao used the energy strikes of his only weapon and cut the predators into pieces in mid-flight. The young soldier watching from the side opened his mouth in surprise, because he was shocked that people could have such skills and strength. After the battle, the commander ordered her subordinates to carry the wounded to the train, and to be extremely careful when cleaning and assembling ingredients. The fighters, who lined up in one line, obeyed the girl and went to carry out her task. The wounded men who were in the car approached the main team member Jiang and decided to get acquainted first. The fighters immediately understood where this command came from, and the bald man was surprised by this information. The soldiers explained that they had heard a lot about Captain Zhang, that she had many nicknames and great inhuman strength. As the girl's eyes lit up with pride, one of the warriors interrupted her joy and said that Xiao Chu had as much strength as she did. The man introduced Xiao Chu to his new comrades and began to praise all of his past achievements. The young men had never heard of such a name before, but they were sure that he would become as famous as Captain Jiang Ling. The girl inquired about the purpose of the soldiers' trip and was told that they were clearing out controlled territories and that there were initially 15 of them. The young man believed that all the problems arose because of monitoring secret areas, because so many breakthroughs had occurred without their knowledge. These men were not the only team to leave the city due to government mistakes. The girl also learned that the formation of secret areas had become more frequent recently, and that most of the monsters had already broken out. Jiang's team had only reached the 5th military camp, and the situation was already getting out of control. The situation in the 2nd military camp was no better, and about 30 teams left the city forever. One of the soldiers from the 2nd camp concluded that the departing teams had decided to spend more time clearing out secret areas, and therefore had not returned to the city. Armed with binoculars, the soldier saw something moving in their direction in the distance. This was Captain Zhang's team's signature armored train. The fighter immediately recognized this armored train, which was rushing from another military camp, and they began preparations to register the opening of the gates. At the moment when the signalman was giving orders to the train to slow down and stop for inspection, the unthinkable happened. The guy held red flags in his hands and looked ahead with horror. The train did not stop and drove straight up to the walls of the camp, stopping at the feet of the soldiers. The train's overhead emergency hatch opened and a bloodied man climbed out. The soldiers who met the train immediately recognized the man, calling him a professional. The man was lying on the ground with a bloody dagger in his hand. The man rose to his feet and instantly turned into a huge yellow insect. It turned out that the train carriages were filled with disgusting flying insects. The men at the building were unarmed, and they had to take the brunt of the attack. Seeing the invasion of these creatures, a young man came to the aid of the guards, who had a machine gun that fired several hundred shots per second. The insects fell to the ground one after another and splashed blood in different directions. There was a wild commotion over the rooftops of the 2nd military camp because of these huge flying monsters. Isolated buildings were engulfed in flames due to collisions with certain insect species. It was unclear why the stranger had caused this chaos and dressed himself in a monster costume. It turned out that it was a completely different train, and the real branded armored train, led by a captain, was just approaching the military camp. One of the soldiers was frightened by what was happening around him and began asking the commander about the monsters. The female fighter, as well as her subordinates, wanted to believe that the stupidity of the monsters would not allow them to attack defenseless people. Deep down, the girl feared that the monster's breakthrough could lead to the death of even 9th-rank professionals. As the train approached the 2nd military camp, the captain saw clouds of smoke through the window. Everyone on the train was shocked by what they saw, because they did not understand what was happening in the 2nd camp. Over the radio, soldiers from the 2nd camp transmitted to the approaching train that they were under attack by monsters and were in a state of emergency. After being informed of the dangerous situation, fighters from the 2nd camp asked for help. One of the soldiers on the armored train informed those present that the commander-in-chief of the second camp had been killed in that fierce battle, and the second military camp had fallen. Despite the seriousness of the situation, the anxious captain still decided to head to the second military camp. The bald man tried to stop her from making a rash decision, since the camp had already fallen anyway. The girl explained to her subordinate that they were going there to rescue survivors. One of the young fighters was furious about what was happening, as he believed that during Musk's time everything was different and calmer. Another guy chuckled at him, saying that the monsters must have found out that Musk was missing from this city. The bald man decided it was time to lighten the mood and said a funny fact. The soldier pointed out to those around him that Xiaoli was now also wearing a mask, and looked very similar to Mask. All the men began to mock the main character, and Musk himself patiently listened to their statements. Despite the jokes, one of the fighters still hit the nail on the head when he said that Musk was actually working undercover, and was now with them. Having suffered the humiliation of the jokes, the protagonist opened his mouth and made it clear to those around him that he really was Musk. All the servants who were in the carriage approached the mask and expressed special respect to him, but Captain Zhang thought that it was all a fairy tale. After all the conversations, the fighter girl turned to Xiao and said that very soon, they would find out whether he lived up to this name or not. As the train approached the second camp, the captain looked out the window and saw an infestation of insects. However, a large group of people managed to escape from the terrible monsters, and desperately called for help from the people from the branded train. The survivors were armed with whatever they could find, and angry insects were flying over their heads. When Captain Zhang's team stepped out of the train carriages, all the insects immediately turned their gaze in their direction. Without thinking twice, the team's main girl took out her special pistol and fired energy bullets at the colony of monsters. When the energy streams reached the insects' bodies, they immediately cut them into pieces. The captain created an energy lightning bolt on her spear and launched it at full force at the remaining monsters. The spear strike was perfectly accurate and precise, as it was able to cut down quite a few insects in flight. Due to the bright flash, many insect bodies were burned alive and fell to the ground. All the surviving people sat down on the ground and thanked Captain Zhang for his timely rescue. One of the group that escaped from the camp strongly advised the girl not to go to the second camp, since even the commander himself had died there. The one who killed the camp commander was humanoid in appearance and stood over 2 meters tall. The man grabbed the weapon, stood up and asked my lady not to commit suicide. Captain Zhang Ling didn't listen to the soldier's words and pointed his sharp spear towards him, causing the bald man to immediately feel fear for this man. The commander informed her subordinates that these fighters were prisoners of the camp who had escaped. Judging by the reaction of the escaped trio, the girl hit the nail on the head. The men tried to justify themselves to the heroes, explaining that none of this mattered. Looking around, the female fighter concluded that these escaped prisoners had killed the professionals who were escorting the civilians. The escapees had a whole arsenal of weapons in their hands, but they didn't even know how to hold them properly. According to the lead woman, one of the prisoners received a wound on the ear during a fight with the one they brutally killed. The men exchanged sharp glances and immediately rushed towards Zhang's team, holding various types of weapons in their hands. With one flick of her spear, Captain Zhang decapitated the bodies of the escaped prisoners. One of the prisoners made the right decision and ran in the opposite direction. He wanted to take civilians hostage in order to survive and not be killed at the hands of a fragile girl. This prisoner also suffered a special fate. His head, separated from his body, rolled to the feet of the civilian population. One of the captain's crew told the girl that he did not remember there being such prisoners in the camp. The cowardly guy approached the lady and asked if there would be a trip to the second camp, but she replied that going there now was too risky. The driver of the armored train informed those around him that their brazier had stopped working because they were constantly traveling at full speed. Unexpectedly for everyone, a young girl from the crowd of civilians offered her help in working with the mechanisms. After a moment, the brazier started working again, and black smoke came out of the chimney. Everyone present opened their mouths in surprise that such a young girl could handle such a heavy mechanism so easily and quickly. Captain Zhang turned to the student and asked her name. The young girl put her hand to her head and introduced herself as Evelyn, and also said that she dreams of becoming the best mechanic in the world. After the decision was made to leave Camp 2, everyone began discussing their next destinations and choosing between Camps 4 and 5. One of the smart people on the team explained to the others that visiting the 4th camp was too risky, so all the survivors would pass through the 2nd camp to get to the 4th. Everyone unanimously decided that the trip should be to the 5th camp, but the main character insisted that they should go to the 4th. Moreover, Evelyn said that the armored train's fuel would only last for 2 days, and it simply wouldn't be enough to reach the 5th camp, which was the farthest away. With the help of the young mechanic Evelyn, the armored train resumed its journey. Captain Zhang and her crew couldn't afford to run out of fuel, especially considering they were responsible for the lives of so many people. Therefore, the entire team had no choice but to take the risk and go to military camp number 4, as Xiaoqiu advised. The soldiers approached the protagonist and asked why he wanted to go to the 4th camp. Captain Zhang began to suspect the hero of being vague, and asked him how he could have known about the remaining fuel in advance. According to Musk's past recollections, it was Camp Y that fell first, and then many checkpoints lost contact with the outside world. Despite Musk's efforts, he still failed to save the people, as they had already been destroyed and turned into monsters' abodes. The girl approached Xiaoqiu and reminded him that Musk was personally arrested by that terrible man, and asked him about him. The man finally stopped hiding his true identity, and told his interlocutor that the man was too righteous. At this time, flying monsters gradually destroyed civilians in the camps. The main monster sat calmly on a rock and read a newspaper, which contained news of everyday life from various corners of humanity. The dangerous creature wanted to deal with every person on this planet. The flying monster strained its wings and flew to other territories to destroy people. All the small insects finished their reprisals against the people and flew after their commander. The civilians who were in the carriage of the branded train were trembling with fear and hugging their children to their chests. One of the soldiers addressed these people and said that they would not encounter monsters, as they were being led by a professional guide. The fighter finished his speech, looked out the window, and saw black smoke left from the fire in the 2nd camp. The civilian men interrupted the soldiers' thoughts and reported that it was not smoke, but an invasion of monsters. Near the train there was indeed an endless number of insects, at the head of which was a human-sized specimen. The bald man immediately turned to Captain Zhang, but she could clearly see what was happening with her own eyes. Inside, the fighter girl doubted her own strength, as this huge creature could destroy the commander of the 2nd camp. There was genuine horror in the girl's eyes, and she was primarily worried about her own life, not the safe delivery of civilians. The goal of the large insect species was the destruction of all humanity. The monster decided to show off his strength and grabbed the first insect he came across and tore off its limb. The giant threw out his subordinate's body and threw his paw at the armored train. The impact caused the train to derail and almost collapse. There was complete chaos inside the carriages. People were falling from side to side and screaming. Young technician Evelyn fell through a window and found herself outside the train. The captain and Xiaoqiu helped the young girl to her feet and found themselves outside. The protagonist and the female fighter tried to get the huge machine back on its wheels, despite the danger they were in. The young girl was surprised that 2 timid people managed to lift a train weighing more than 10,000 tons with such ease. All the citizens and soldiers who were inside the train breathed a sigh of relief and began to hug each other. When the team got off the train, the commander ordered all subordinates to guard the train so that it would not be captured by monsters. Even the young mechanic had a task to do, as the mistress ordered her to repair all the damaged wheels and check the train for any faults before it could continue on its journey. At such a dangerous moment, the lives of civilians meant little, but the team could not afford to lose the armored train. Only by saving the strong first do fighters have a chance for a great future. Zhongling created streams of energy lightning on her spear and met the first wave of insects. Captain Zhang was not afraid to fly towards dangerous monsters and cut them into small pieces. The captain's subordinates doubted that she was only of 6th rank, since her powers were for a much higher rank. One of the soldiers clarified that even an 8th rank professional could not have done something like this with such ease. The bald man said that the captain's rank would indeed change soon, as she deserved more. 3 additional wings appeared on the back of the main insect specimen. The civilian hero pointed out the creature and told the military that it was he who had killed the commander-in-chief. Xiaoqiu and Zhongling grabbed their weapons and decided to attack the main insect species. The monster stood calmly to the side and folded his arms across his chest, since none of their attacks harmed him. In fact, the main monster used the afterimage skill and was already far away from her at this time. While the girl was pondering the creature's power, she was suddenly kicked and found herself on the ground. The anxious soldiers became nervous and began to shout for the captain, but she did not pay attention to their calls. A terrifying, muscular monster was flying straight towards her to deliver the killing blow. The insect created a stream of special skill in her hand, but the girl managed to come to her senses and repel the attack. The creature's sharp hand was just a few centimeters from the heroine's eyes. Xiaoqiu managed to react and intervene, thereby saving Captain Zhongling's life. The monster flew back several meters from the main character's powerful blow, cutting down many trees with its flight. The female fighter was shocked by the strength and power of the young and fragile guy. Xiaoqiu ordered his companion to deal with the remaining monsters, while he himself decided to take care of the main creature's safety. The guy went off to attack a large insect and the girl, watching him go, whispered to him not to dare die. When the huge monster landed on his feet, he immediately saw the main character walking towards him. After sniffing, the large specimen informed the fighter that he smelled like the same monsters as he did. Xiaoqiu transformed into the form of a terrifying monster, and informed the insect that he would now fight with it on equal terms. As soon as Xiaoqiu turned into a monster, the insect's heart was filled with an unusual emotion. Since the creatures had already encountered each other, the insect decided not to waste time and attack first, in order to increase its chances of survival. With all his might, the predator struck Xiaoqiu straight in the face. The protagonist used a special skill and cut the creature's body into pieces with one blow. Xiao defeated the monster and received the God of the Fugitive Mind skill as a reward. And the second stage of the monster's blade's evolution also began, giving it new abilities. The blade can now transform into a flock of crows that will rain down on enemies, sucking all the blood out of them. The main character was glad that his only weapon became stronger and increased its level. The loyal soldier reported to the captain that they had killed all the flying insects, and that none of the people on the armored train had been harmed. The men didn't understand where Xiaoqiu was, and the bald fighter was sure that he wouldn't sacrifice himself for everyone. The girl began to worry about her comrade, but the cowardly soldier joyfully shouted that he saw Q's return. The victorious protagonist walked calmly between the lush trees. The man approached the hero and asked him about the fight, but he only replied that he had managed to kill the boss. The man became nervous and concluded that this young man's rank was higher than 7th, since that monster had exactly that rank. After defeating the monsters on the train, they began to provide first aid to all the victims. Captain Zhang Ling and Musk were left alone, and the girl thanked him for saving her, but it was to no avail. The speed at which the soldier's strength increased defied the logic of the female fighter, as this had previously only been achieved by the legendary mask. The conversation between the two experienced fighters was interrupted by the appearance of a young mechanic, who reported that radio contact with all camps had suddenly been lost. The girl added that she thinks the problem is definitely not in their equipment. The mechanic had a feeling that their signal was being jammed by something from the outside, so they couldn't send or receive messages from the outside world. It was clear that the armored train had been isolated from the surrounding environment, and this made Chu very worried. The protagonist has received a new task, which requires him to destroy a new wave of monsters that will cover the entire territory. The team received a radio message from Camp 4, which was strange, since yesterday the radio equipment really couldn't pick up a signal from them. The mechanic went to the radio and reported her situation and location to Camp 4. The tower of the 4th military camp received messages from the train and told them to head to their camp to stay safe. The young girl approached the captain and asked her to make a decision about sending the train to the 4th camp, where they could replenish their fuel supplies. The military was determined that they would now go to a quiet place where they could have a good rest, and civilians would be able to start life with a clean slate. Suddenly, the radio began to vibrate again, and a warning message came out of it, warning the train not to trust messages from the 4th camp. Everyone present was stunned by what they heard, since, as was reported, the 4th camp had long been controlled by monsters. The young girl could not understand how monsters without intelligence were able to use radio equipment and imitate human speech. There have been too many cases in the past where monsters have imitated humans, such as the ones in the shrine, and that huge humanoid insect. The captain grabbed the radio and contacted the other camps to explain the entire situation with the 4th camp. They reported over the radio that 2 days ago, there was a breakthrough of monsters that were strong and smart enough to deceive the survivors. The survivors reported that 3 8th-rank professionals were killed in the battle, and the commander of their military camp was also killed. The people gave their coordinates where they had set up a temporary shelter, and again asked not to trust the messages from the 4th camp. It was unclear which of the messages to trust, since it was quite possible that the message about the traps was transmitted by intelligent monsters. The foolish soldiers suggested that the captain go to a temporary shelter, but the girl was sure that the 4th camp could not be captured so easily. All the civilian men were of the same opinion that the temporary shelter was a trap, and that the main city of the 4th camp did not actually contain monsters. The captain listened to everyone's opinion and was at a crossroads. She did not know what decision to make. After everyone had spoken, the female fighter turned to Xiaoqiu and asked his opinion on the current situation. The man stood up proudly and informed everyone that they should not go to either of the two places because they were both traps. The reason why the front line fell so quickly in Xiao's previous life was because some monsters had intelligence and cunning. Led by the monsters, they came to the conclusion that the monsters were able to deceive people into enslaving them, making them loyal slaves. According to the protagonist's memories, the 4th military camp never fell in the first place and was supposed to hold out until humanity struck back. Apparently, due to the absence of mask in this world, the control of the demonic gods has diminished, and this has led to a large-scale war that did not happen in the past life. As soon as the train reached the specified coordinates, the heroes actually saw a camp built by the surviving people. Those who came out to greet the arriving rescue soldiers were precisely the survivors of the fourth camp. But there was one problem with the whole situation. They had already become the tame dogs of the monsters, who forced them to pretend to be ordinary people in order to lure other squads to them. However, in the past, even before they attacked, Xiaoqiu had killed everyone. Although the fighters managed to clear the entire camp, when only a quarter of Evelyn's group arrived, they were immediately killed by the enemy. It was unclear what was actually going on in Camp 4, as they had completely shut down the radios and other communication systems. The girl turned to her companion and asked him if the monsters had truly become smarter and acquired human intelligence, and she immediately received a positive answer. Unlike other gods, this one decided to kill humanity with its own weapons, using the mind and intellect of ordinary people. It is extremely difficult to detect among ordinary people. In his previous life, Xiaoqiu fought to the death with the monster gods in the void, but this one never showed his true form. The captain noticed the young man had a powerful sword, and learned that it was a gift from his friend. In fact, the main character killed his friend when he was suffering from an incurable disease. Suddenly, one of the soldiers called Captain Zhang Ling and asked him to look outside. Armed with binoculars, the captain saw a large horde of huge monsters, which were of different types and sizes. Several thousand monsters were moving towards the fourth camp, as was the armored train. Armored vehicles were moving towards the monsters, trying to knock them off their path with powerful fire. The captain thought that this was a tactic of the monsters to lure them into a trap. When the train stopped, the bald man shouted to those in the car that he was glad to see those on their side. When the man approached the car, armed soldiers pointed their guns and prevented him from moving. Captain Jiang and her entourage were frightened by what was happening, because it was something incomprehensible and scary. A young man emerged from the car with a huge sword over his shoulder. The bald man wanted to discuss the incomprehensible moment with this guy, but he immediately grabbed his weapon. That guy decided that the ones standing in front of him were traitors, since they came from the same side as those monsters, who didn't even touch them. Unexpectedly for everyone, the captain's teacher appeared from the side and asked the young man to put away his knife. The man no longer looked so positive, because his entire body was covered in deep wounds and blood. The first military camp is a quarantine zone for those suspected of treason. Many soldiers deserted to join this camp, but they were all locked up here as there is no quick way to identify traitors. The girl and her entourage were locked behind bars, and the commander-in-chief asked her not to worry about the camps, since everyone who could was evacuated to this camp. The girl learned from the teacher that they left traps to cause certain difficulties for the monsters. On his way, the commander also encountered traitors who stabbed him right in the back using deception. The man asked his old acquaintances not to hold a grudge against him because of the temporary ban, as it was a simple formality and safety measure. Captain Zhang wanted to ask the teacher why the monsters had become intelligent, as this had significantly increased the number of casualties on the front lines. The man explained that the changes were related to the monster gods, who were the source of all these creatures. Captain Zhang and her team will be under observation for a few more days, and once the military camp is satisfied that they are safe, they will be assigned a new mission. The fighter's isolation ward was quite good, as it was equipped with a television and 2 soft beds. The protagonist examined the military map and concluded that there was a dormant volcano near this camp. The TV reported that due to some kind of influx of monsters, the government delivered a 5th batch of supplies to the front, and the members of the Federation themselves decided to go and clean up the territory. The Federation members have publicly explained to everyone that the situation is completely under their control, and the Federation is fully prepared for these events. The girl was angry that the government was showing off in front of the cameras, but she liked the fact that they were going to the front lines with skills at rank 8. Unexpectedly, the main characters received an order that their quarantine was lifted, and they would be appointed squadron commanders on the front lines. The soldiers were given back their weapons and equipment and asked to return to their duty stations that very day. The situation on the front lines has deteriorated so much that the government is sending there those whose loyalty they have not yet been convinced of. The protagonist turned to the guard and asked him to find Evelyn, who would go with him. Captain Zhang Ling and Mask were brought to the squad, so that they could at least get to know them and become one team. The heroes will have 100 people under their command, but none of them have any outstanding abilities. The girl couldn't understand why they had come up with this circus, because there was no use for the prisoners of the atonement camp, who had 0 morals and completely ignored all orders. The man decided to console the captain and handed her a box of radios so that she could communicate with subordinates within a 3-kilometer radius. The guard also told the main characters that they had special privileges, using a map, they could choose the place they wanted to go. The man told me that the situation in the northwest was very negative, and that the monsters were concentrating their attacks in that area, so he recommended choosing another location. The protagonist interrupted the man and said that they would go to this very place. The guards started shouting, saying that this was the most dangerous zone, since 3 sides of its defense had fallen. Only the front line was still holding out with its last strength. In addition to the man's anger, Xiaoqiu demanded 20 military maps of the territory from him as payment for such a serious choice. The camp representative wanted to stop the protagonist, but at that moment, Captain Zhang also agreed to go to that dangerous place. The female fighter immediately understood why her comrade had acted this way. He wanted to create hopeless conditions for the camp's criminals so that they would obey all orders without question. However, she believed that this was all too risky, because the prisoners could fall into despair, and, in addition to the monsters, the commanders would have to deal with their melancholy. The protagonist was confident in his abilities and tried to put Captain Zhang in a positive mood, while young Evelyn was already ready nearby. After the elders talked, the mechanic approached Xiaoqiu and tried to dissuade him from such a serious act, but he decided that they were worth a try. The protagonist handed Evelyn a piece of paper and ordered her to go to points on the map and plant explosive devices there. The prisoners' looks were quite good, and Xiao, calling them scum, thanked them for it. One of the prisoners grabbed a weapon and began to threaten his leader. The man aimed at Chu's head and told him to be calm, as they had already played along with him in the camp in the past. The prisoner wanted to let the protagonist go without a bullet in his head, but in return offered entertainment in the form of those beautiful ladies who stood behind him. Without thinking twice, the captain approached the prisoner and pointed a lightning-fast spear at him, and he trembled with fear. The girl pierced the attacker's chest and he ran back, choking on blood. The same prisoners did not know how to behave in such a difficult situation. Captain Zhang created streams of purple lightning around herself and warned the others to be quiet. The protagonist added that in case of disobedience, every prisoner would die at his hands. Xiao also warned the men not to think about escaping, as 3 directions were surrounded by monsters, and 1 was guarded by a powerful army. Hearing strange sounds, young Evelyn grabbed her binoculars and looked into the distance. The girl saw powerful explosions and columns of military equipment, and how one huge monster bit off the head of one of the soldiers. A frightened Evelyn informed those around her that the defense had fallen under the onslaught of the monsters, and they were now completely surrounded. The prisoners became agitated and shouted at Xiaoqiu not to drag them along with him to certain death. The hero showed joy to the prisoners and said that now they had no chance of escape, so they would fight against the monsters together with him. Only by following orders can all the men survive, creating a miracle with their own hands. The protagonist reached the most important stage of preparation for the battle, and asked the prisoners to divide into groups of 10 people, and allowed each group to report and obey only him. The men obeyed and divided into teams, each of which was given a radio, which they were told to guard until their death. Young Evelyn reported to the commander that she had figured out how to plant explosive devices, and that the group would soon be sent on a mission. Suddenly, the hero's radio began to shake, and Group B, which had gone northwest, reported to him that they had encountered a bunch of monsters and would not be able to hold them off until the end. Xiao ordered them to retreat back immediately and report this to the people in other camps so that they could send a plane for evacuation. An alarmed Xiaoqiu concentrated his groups and ordered them to use tactical grenades. The prisoners were no longer in the mood for escape, as a few meters away from them there were huge monsters that looked like rhinoceroses. It turned out that the commander gave the wrong command to a group of prisoners and sent them to the place where the monsters were located. When the yellow fighters approached the river to escape the monsters, they saw a new wave that looked like skeletons. The men were not sure that they were monsters, as they looked quite calm. In the end, the prisoners didn't bother to figure out who they really were and simply threw grenades at them. There were numerous explosions, but no creature was harmed by them, and they continued to attack. After all the explosions, the monsters discovered that the people had fled the scene and gone off in an unknown direction, which made them very angry. Xiao continued to command the group and ordered them to use the remote mines a few seconds after hiding. Each group of prisoners did not remain without the commander's attention and constantly received his precise instructions. As a result, 2 groups of criminals ran towards each other, with waves of monsters moving behind them. The other groups watched what was happening and did not know whether they would survive this fight or not. The prisoners didn't understand how Xiaoqiu could have miscalculated the location where they were all supposed to meet, since it was supposed to be the safest place in the secret realm. One of the prisoners, who had a stupid face, told his comrades that they had to follow the commander's orders to stay alive. The fighters approached the cliff and, on Xiao's command, threw grenades towards the monsters, and it was quite effective. Once the groups from the redemption camp had completed their mission, they returned to the summit not as a full group, but in twos and threes. After which, according to Xiao Qiu's plan, the explosive devices that were placed near the volcano were detonated by Captain Jiang. The powerful explosion caused the rotor of the extinct volcano to be completely destroyed, and at the same time a large amount of water gushed out from it. In an instant, the monsters that were near the volcano were swallowed up by an unstoppable flow of water. The prisoners, Xiao, Evelyn, and the commanders were happy with this outcome of events and Xiao Qiu's brilliant calculation of all the nuances. Just as the generals at headquarters were in shock at the speed and capture of the front line by the monsters, they received news that the main enemy forces in the northwest had been successfully held back. And when the government found out that it was a group of criminals, they were even more shocked. But they still decided to attribute this victory to a trusted person of the state who had made no contribution throughout the entire battle. But the government still decided to send a rescue plane for the prisoners who were at the volcano. And when they thought that their sentences would be removed or reduced, they found themselves behind bars again. Later, the prisoners learned that their services had not been recognized, which provoked mass riots in the camp. Armed soldiers killed all the rebels for attempting a coup. In the first military camp of the commander-in-chief's residence, talk began that some unrest had occurred in the prison. The army commander said the killing of the prisoners was inevitable because their release could bring more problems. The Federation secretary was angry about what was happening and hoped that this would not happen again in the future. The commander asked the man about the rumors that he had arrived with special weapons. The chairman reported that everything was going according to plan, as this weapon was already on the front lines and was actively fighting the monsters. Indeed, this weapon was on the front lines in the hands of professional specialists. When the professionals were ready to repel the attacks of the wave of monsters, one of the soldiers announced that special support had arrived and they needed to leave their positions. In a secret area at the front, a line of huge, muscular fighters appeared, brought in by specialists. After checking the equipment, specialists allowed each professional to go to the front lines. Before the fight, each fighter injected himself with a special injection into his shoulder, which was supposed to somehow help in the fight. Indeed, the injection produced a special effect, instantly increasing the fighters' muscles. The men ran towards the monsters and there was not a drop of fear in their eyes. The ordinary soldiers were surprised that such strong people came to support them. From the hands of each fighter, limbs, heads, and liters of blood from slain monsters flew in all directions. The army of muscular soldiers was surrounded by the largest specimens of the monsters, but they were unable to even get close to the fighters. The lead soldier asked the specialist to stop this madness, as these crazy fighters would soon face death. The man explained to the young soldier that this was the only way these men could show their strength and power, and that they were not afraid of any murder. At some point, one of the fighters took off his protective helmet, and underneath it was the face of a real monster, which had red eyes and a long tongue. All the surrounding monsters immediately felt a similar aura, and stopped their attack for a while. The fighter took the second injection and was ready to destroy everyone who came his way. The skull of the monster soldier glowed and enlarged veins appeared all over his body. Just a small group of fighters was able to repel the influx of huge monsters. The specialists were most pleased with their success, since this great experiment could bring them special fruits. It turned out that these monster fighters were created with the help of surgery and drugs. The monsters' hearts were pounding, and they were in a hurry to immediately head to the next line of defense to spill the blood of all the creatures. The specialists wanted to conduct tests on the bodies of these powerful fighters, but suddenly they saw an incredibly huge creature moving towards them from the side. The fighter had no idea where this overgrown creature had come from, but the specialist, through his fear, explained to him that this monster was made up of the corpses of slain monsters. Without understanding the whole situation, the energy fighter went to attack this monster. When the warrior attacked the huge creature, he was immediately grabbed by its hand. Judging by the external data, the specialist found that it was a monster of the 8th or even 9th level, since it certainly had fast reflexes. The captured fighter believed that this large monster was just trash, and he himself would definitely survive. Trying to escape the creature's clutches, the fighter administered another injection, and his uniform was torn into several pieces, and his body became simply enormous. But this did not bring any results, as soon the huge hands of the monsters crushed the fighter into mush. The camp commander received a report about this 9th-rank monster, and immediately ran to warn the other camps. Looking out the window, the camp commander saw that there were quite a lot of these 9th-rank monsters, and they were near the camp. The tired general came to the chairman and began to complain about the endless number of natural disasters. The commander believed that all the chaos on the front lines was happening because Musk was not there. The chairman agreed that Musk should be appropriately punished for the situation on the front lines. The Federation chairman asked the commander how many professionals of the 7th rank and above were currently in the army's ranks. The commander reported that his army had about 40 people of similar ranks and 6 professionals of the 9th rank. After the report, the chairman expressed the opinion that all these professionals should be able to withstand attacks from monsters, since they have a large amount of cannon fodder. Despite his high rank, the Federation chairman asked the commander not to consider him part of the army, since he had arrived to observe the fighting. The man ordered the commander to gather all the cannon fodder and send them to the front lines, after which he would use nuclear weapons and get rid of all the creatures. The representative didn't care about the deaths of ordinary soldiers, because he wanted to ensure that high-ranking professionals were not harmed in any way in this cataclysm. Initially, the use of nuclear weapons required special permission from the central government of the city of Zvezda. But now that the Federation representative himself has agreed, no problems should arise. The commander agreed with the representative and promised to organize everything soon. Bloody battles continued to rage on the front lines, and there was a commotion among the soldiers. Arriving at the place where the 9th rank monsters were, Xiaoqiu immediately sensed the demon god and the fickle mind within them. The young soldier wanted to attack the monsters with 2 sharp swords, because he was clearly very afraid of this creature. The huge monster stretched out his hand and with a light movement crushed this poor man. In addition to large black monsters, large centipedes and various spiders appeared in the secret area. In front of Captain Jiang, a wolf-like monster appeared again, and she immediately used a lightning effect. The girl turned to Xiaoqiu and asked him how to turn the situation to their advantage. The protagonist said that he had a special plan, but he needed an hour to prepare. The girl and the hero were surrounded by monsters, and they realized that they did not have time for any preparations. The captain began to repel the attacks with everything she had, and was already prepared for a terrible death. The girl decided to go to the underworld and talk face-to-face with her father about past childhood grievances. The lady approached the cliff and took a step forward. In fact, it wasn't suicide, but a calculated maneuver to inflict more damage on the monsters. The girl flew up and wanted to pierce the palm of the huge black monster with a spear, but she did not succeed. The monster waved its powerful hand, and the girl Zhang flew down. Captain Zhang was already prepared for death, but suddenly the main character flew up to her and grabbed her in midair. He left the exhausted girl to rest and told her that she was mistaken in only one thing: he was not going to die here. Xiao stepped aside, swung his sword, and instantly transformed into that powerful monster. When the girl came to her senses, she saw that instead of Xiaoqiu there was some kind of terrible monster, and then she understood everything. Using his only weapon and fairly high skills, the protagonist managed to neutralize the huge monster and drain liters of blood from it. The creature disappeared, and the winner stood in the form of a monster and proudly raised a bloody sword. The ordinary soldiers couldn't believe that someone had managed to kill this huge black monster so easily. The commanders-in-chief, who were already about to use the nuclear bomb, were shocked by what they saw. The chairman reported that this was also the most humanoid monster seen in Dahi City, and this time, it had definitely turned from a human. The chairman suggested sending this monster for examination, but suddenly the radio reported that nuclear warheads had been launched towards this monster. Everything around started to glow red, and the commander-in-chief and his representative realized that they had done something stupid. The young fighters looked desperately at the warheads and realized that they were merely bait for the monsters that the state had used. The chairman put a smile on his face and announced into the void that the Federation and he personally would never forget the success of those fighters. A huge purple eye appeared in front of the warheads, which was clearly some kind of monster. The chairman clutched his glasses in his hand and was horrified by what he saw. The man reported that a demonic god, which the main character had previously reported, had appeared on the battlefield. Previously, humanity compared the monster to shrimp in a net, since small monsters like shrimp can get to the ground through a net. Elemental-level monsters are comparable to small fish that easily swim through the net, while the demonic god, in this context, is a huge shark that does not have the chance to swim through the net. Previously, only Musk was convinced that the confrontation between humans and monsters could be resolved by killing the demonic god, while others at the time were considering a compromise. The nuclear warheads that were flying towards Musk were destroyed by the power of the demonic god. The chairman, who had hoped that the demon god would die immediately from the nuclear bomb, opened his mouth and cold sweat poured down his face. The commander-in-chief understood that fighting the demonic god was beyond their strength. The chairman wanted to immediately return to the City of Stars to personally report that the situation at the front had gotten out of control. However, the commander-in-chief realized that the Federation chairman simply wanted to flee the dangerous area and leave the soldiers alone with the monsters. The commander shouted after the departing chairman that he too was obliged to return to the City of Stars, since he knew the whole situation on the battlefield better than anyone else. Xiao continued to fight the huge creatures, but at some point, after falling, he noticed the gaze of the demon god. The protagonist destroyed half of the mask so that an old acquaintance could see his real face. And indeed, the huge eye of the demonic god noticed the hero and remembered how he killed him in his past life. Captain Zhang didn't understand why the demon god was staring at an ordinary skinny guy. It soon dawned on the girl that the only person who could be treated this way was Musk. The girl had already concluded for herself that it was indeed Musk, since that demonic god was frightened by his face. The demonic god spun in the air and began to disappear from sight. His huge monster subordinates turned into statues and soon crumbled into tiny stones. The creatures turned in the opposite direction and retreated from the secret area. The soldiers were glad they had survived and hugged each other. Musk himself realized that this was the end of all the showdowns with the monsters, and he closed his eyes in relief. As soon as Musk entered the void in his past life, the demon god immediately hid himself and never even met him face to face. But once everyone around knew that Musk had given up his identity, the demon god finally gathered his courage and prepared to attack. The protagonist would never have thought that this god would be so scared that he would clench his tail and run away just after seeing Musk. If the demon god were to analyze his strength, with his 13th rank, he would be able to crush him like an ant. With this, Musk's personal mission was completed, making him a true god in the eyes of all people. Sai still couldn't enjoy the free energy of his body, but suddenly something interrupted him. Looking back, the protagonist saw the commanders-in-chief of the camps and the chairman of the Federation, behind whom stood an army of armed soldiers. The captain stood up for Musk and informed the commander that he was her comrade and not a monster. The chairman stated that a monster always remains a monster, and besides, he had been hiding for a long time, and now he must bear full responsibility for the influx of monsters. The commander confirmed the words of the Federation chairman and added that Musk's appearance summons natural disaster monsters. The girl couldn't believe it and wanted to open the eyes of those present to all of Musk's competent actions and the salvation of humanity from all the monsters. The girl tried to explain that Xiao Qiu fought against monsters, helping people, although he should have sided with all creatures. The commander concluded that both Captain Zhang and Xiao Qiu were to blame for the influx of monsters and ordered his subordinates to arrest both of them. The armed fighters approached the main characters, and Xiao, at that very moment, with one light movement of his hand, threw them into the sky. The commander-in-chief put brass knuckles on his hand, and was glad that Musk showed his true face. The commander rushed at Musk, hoping that he had no strength left after the hard battle. Musk, without thinking, grabbed the chairman and pierced him through with his modest weapon. When the chairman was already dead, the commander told the soldiers to quickly arrest this crazy man, but they were against it. The man suddenly fell silent as Musk's energy sword appeared above him, about to deliver a fatal blow to him. Captain Zhang watched the killing of people from the sidelines and could not contain her emotions. The blind commander-in-chief arrived at the scene of the tragedy and expressed joy at Musk's return. The man knelt down and promised the protagonist that, upon returning to the city, everything that belonged to him would be returned to him, and the military units would swear allegiance to him. After returning from the secret regions, an open meeting was held to sum up the results of the battle, in which 6 7th-ranked demons, 25 8th-ranked demons, and 12 9th-ranked demons were destroyed. The faces of Team Jiang and Xiao Qiu appeared on the big screen, and the speaker declared that the memory of their actions would live forever. The man also conveyed to the public that in this battle, a group of people was identified that had caused heavy losses on the front line. The speaker showed photos of Musk, and told the people that such traitors had killed many of their fellow men for their own lives. People could not believe what they saw, and they were terrified that such traitors were hiding among ordinary people. One of the men came onto the stage and created a rally about betrayal in the army. The television reporters who were following the incident tore their gaze away from the scene and began filming the roof of a large house. On the roof of the building stood the ordinary Xiao Qiu, holding his humble weapon. The crowd of people shouted that it was the bloodthirsty bridge, and everyone started running in different directions. The army of fighters grabbed their weapons and ran towards Xiao Qiu. The protagonist continued to stand in place, and with only a light wave of his hand repelled the attacking soldiers. The soldiers wanted to call for help, but it was too late, as the main character's power began to emerge and something terrible could happen. Xiao Qiu walked up to the stage and everyone made way for him without a word. The male speaker saw Xiao Qiu, with whom he had previously fought side by side, and now accused of absurd crimes. The man tried to calm himself by elevating himself to a higher level than the real Musk. The speaker wanted to fight Musk, and before doing so, he injected himself with a newly developed compound. The young man did not want to take part in the battle with this vile man, but he simply wanted to capture the public's attention. He was quite brief, and, opening his mouth, informed everyone present that he was the real Musk. The entire crowd was unaware of what was actually happening, and suddenly Musk noticed Captain Zhang among them. The girl had previously guessed that this was Musk, but she didn't believe it until the very end. The hero told the people that only he could give them hope for a bright life, and all their possible stupidities would only lead them to death. Xiao Qiu explained to the people that their government was trying to instill fear in them, which would deny all of Musk's services to the state. The man who drank the enhancer fell to his knees and bowed his head in death. Unafraid of his statement, Musk announced to everyone that from this day on, this world belongs only to him. In Captain Zhang's mind, all the pieces of the puzzle about the young man's powerful strength and stories came together. People raised their hands and started shouting for Musk to rule this world forever.